This is a work of fiction. Any resemblance to real events or persons is purely coincidental. This story is purely fictional and does not promote or encourage any form of violence. Prologue. Sir, the geological surveys all came back clean. There's nothing we could have done to predict this. The man standing in front of the tool pusher, the person in charge of every crew on the oil rig, nervously reported. The tool pusher looked back at him with dead eyes, a slight sneer on his face. You think those eco-terrorists that masquerade as conservationists will give a damn that there was an earthquake? You think they won't blame Earth-friendly oil for the largest spill in a decade? EFO was already in the spotlight after that crew lost control 5 years ago. And then you tap into the largest underwater oil deposit anyone has ever seen. A week after you make the call, an earthquake on a city-killing scale has its epicenter right where we are drilling. You think they will let that be passed off as a coincidence? Well, most likely, no. But what do you mean I made the call? The nervous roughneck tried to speak, only to be cut off with a hand held out at chest level. Look, I know you are a good guy, and you run a tight crew. You're real good at what you do. You're also fired. We need someone to take the fall, and you are the only likely candidate. The tool pusher sighed at the bleak look, which was the only response to his words. Look, it isn't like we're going to send you off with nothing. We're giving you 5 years' pay as severance. And if you change your name, we'll even give you a glowing recommendation. Change my name? You're blaming this on me. There was a blazing fury in his eyes now. I was only here so I could make enough money to finish my doctorate. You were the one that made us. Yeah, well, thing is, we can't have you associated with us after this incident, since your name will forevermore be the hallmark of damage to the environment. The tool pusher put his feet up on his desk, chuckled heartlessly, and waved his ex-employee off. Sure as heck ain't gonna be me going down for this. Let us know what new name you come up with. You're gonna ought to play it like this? Fine. I'm going to find a way to get back at all of you, even if that means ridding the world of its dependence on oil entirely. The fire turned to ice in the man's glare. From now on, you can call me Alan. He stormed out of the office, then had to wait an hour before a helicopter arrived to take him away. Alan decided he had had enough of this world, the drama, the strife. He decided to pursue the dreams he had as a child. He would work toward building a colony on the neighboring planet Mars. Alan reached into his bag, sneaking a peek at the large blue glowing rock that had been pulled up from under the ocean floor. Core. This rock was filled with power. He just knew it. Core, was it an alien artifact? It almost seemed to be whispering to him. In the right light, there were even faint markings coating the blue stone in shimmering, undulating light. Core, for Abyss's sake, almost as if it were covered in chains. Ellen decided to study this core. Core. He felt an odd satisfaction with the term. He would reach his dream eventually, but he needed a way to make money. Elan turned his mind to his past interests, the internet, renewable energy, and outer space. Over the next few years, Elan rose like a phoenix in the tech world. He started a payment system, multiple companies, and finally, the pinnacle of his dream, a privately owned space research center, Space-Y. Then the stock market crashed and he was out of money. Well, for a very short amount of time. With newfound free time, and after years of putting it off, Ellen devoted his efforts to researching the core more directly, instead of simply carrying it around as a good luck charm and reminder. After weeks of preparation, Elan hooked energy-sensitive wires between the core and his personal computer, in an attempt to analyze it. His monitor flickered, and the metrics on the side of his screen went haywire. There was no way that his Wi-Fi had just transferred 43 exabytes of data, was there? Elan stared at his shifting monitor as text appeared on it. Wow, about time. Smells kinda musky in here. So this is what the world is like now, huh? You humans have some splaining to do. Chapter 1. Drink up, boys, Staff Sergeant Connect called. Tomorrow we're on QRF all day long. Sergeant Nelson shook his head, a tiny bit professionally upset by his soldiers drinking so heavily the night before they were on duty for the Quick Reaction Force. To be fair, as the medic, he was against them drinking at all in this heat. The motto of the Army may as well be, drink water. He understood the need the others felt to forget their troubles, but tomorrow they would be wearing full kit in 110-degree weather. Come on, little Joe. Private First Class Johnson slapped his favorite medic on the shoulder. If they get too dehydrated, just do what you always do. Stick 'em. Way too loud. Sergeant Nelson glared at the overfamiliar tone. Johnson, you know that you can't be so casual and use my first name like that around officers. They're super touchy about that, especially when we get a chance to drink. You know they are always looking for an excuse to take away drinking privileges. Indeed, a few of the butter bars, second lieutenants, had glared over at them and muttered something to the people at their table. The captain grabbed the hostile officer as he started to stand, shaking his head to force the agitated man to calm down. Also, we don't have a bunch of IVs right now, so it'll be a bit hard to stick 'em, as you suggest. The shipment of supplies is late. Hell, the fuel shipment is late again, which is why we are doing half patrols. If we had a logistics sergeant in charge over there instead of that two-bit Louie, we... La! The PFC put his hands over his ears. I'm not hearing you say bad things about our executive officer right now. I'm not getting into logistics, administration, or politics. When a gleam appeared in Joey's eyes, Johnson quickly amended, or religion. Nope, tonight I'm drinking. Even though he wanted to say something, the PFC sure had him pegged. Sergeant Nelson laughed and settled back into his seat. It was fun to mess with this kid's head. He slowly sipped his one beer for the night, drinking twice as much water to counteract the dehydration. Good times. We've got a problem, sir. A radio operator, Specialist Kraut, had been pulled out of headquarters and pressed into service on the medevac helicopter when the last guy had come down with a bad case of dying. First platoon got hit. They found an IED the wrong way. QRF is on the way, but they need evac and medical attention ASAP. Wow. Use more acronyms in your next report, Kraut. A sarcastic reply was snapped out. The pilot, Warrant Officer Lyons, warmed up the rotors and soon began flying toward the coordinates Kraut provided. He turned his head to look behind him. Nelson, you and your guys ready to go? According to the 9-line medevac report included, there were no hostiles in the area, so landing to pick up wounded was a top priority. Joe was relieved to hear that they could go right in. Their platoon only had 2 choppers and both were used for quick pickups. Battalion, almost 50 miles south, had the real firepower, and he didn't want to wait an additional 20 minutes to save his comrades and friends. Always, sir, Joe shouted the reply. Jumping the few remaining feet as soon as they touched down, Sergeant Nelson and his 2 specialists grabbed a gurney and made a run for the smoking wreck of a Humvee. The wounded were spread on the ground as far as 20 feet away, and low moans of pain came from several of them. Those ones didn't worry him as much as the men who were silent. A staff sergeant came over and gave them a quick situation report. 5 wounded, 2 critically. Myers is awake, but not making any noise. He lost his leg. He should be screaming. He held back a sob as he spoke. Different man, different way of dealing with pain. Nothing you could do, brother. Nice work on that tourniquet. Nelson shook his head as he knelt down to triage the men. After an initial assessment and the adjustment of a few tourniquets, he noted with relief that all of these men would survive if they got proper care in a timely manner. They loaded up the worst of the wounded and took off. Sergeant Nelson was fully absorbed in keeping the men stable until he heard an ominous shout. "Oh shit!" The chopper took a hard turn, which gave Nelson the perfect view of an RPG coming straight at the broadside of the chopper. There was a flash of fiery light just before everything went black. Chapter 2. Beep. Beep. Joey Nelson opened his eyes so he could shout at Johnson to shut off the stupid game he was always playing. He tried to turn, but found his head held fast. Now fully awake, he looked around and saw white everywhere. He had been in them enough to recognize the flat colors and prison cell feel of an army hospital. "Fuck," was all he could say, as close to swearing as he allowed himself to get. At least for the hard swear words anyway. A smiling face came into view. "Awake, are you?" They were right. Good. Right on schedule. Good, good. "Who are you?" Joey Bleary asked. The drugs he was on right now must be really good. "Are you a doctor?" The greasy smile quivered a bit, as the man seemed to be dealing with an internal battle for morality. Morality lost by a large margin. "Well, no. I'm sorry to say I am an attorney." "What the? For what?" Joey struggled to remain fully cognizant of his surroundings. "Where are we? There are no lawyers in this godforsaken desert. The only good thing about the whole dang place. That's uncalled for." The greasy man's eyes shifted into a hurt look. "We are back in the States. You must have been out of it for quite a while. About a month, I believe. Just long enough for the paperwork." "What are you going on about? You an army lawyer? They kicking me out now?" Nelson's voice had a dreamy quality to it as the drugs tried to send him off to the darkness again. No. Well, yes. You are getting an honorable discharge, a few medals, and most likely a pension. But that's not my department. No, I am here representing your wife, Daisy. Mustabadi. A wet tongue flicked out and moistened his lips. "Where is she? Is she coming to visit?" Joey looked around desperately for his wife. They had only been married a few months when he got his deployment orders. She already did. And well, that is why I am here. I specialize in divorce cases, and I needed to inform you that your wife is getting your marriage annulled. In this case, she's not trying for anything that you owned, and she will only take the possessions and money that she brought into the relationship. She wants this to be as painless as possible for you. The faux concern in his voice pulled Joe back toward awareness. Joey's eyes bulged out. "What? Why would she leave me? He tried to sit up, only to realize that he could not move at all. He had thought that he was held in place, but now darker, more insidious ideas of his status were appearing in his mind. "You must understand how difficult it would be for a 20-year-old woman to be married to a quadriplegic, sir." The lawyer stopped in shock as Joey's eyes went blank and his face drained of color. "Sir?" "Hey!" A female doctor stepped into the room. "Who are you? Is he awake? What did you tell him? What are you talking about?" The confusion was evident on the lawyer's face. "I have a legal right to inform him. If he is awake, it is the first time since he got shot down. Get out, or I'll have you arrested," the doctor shouted in a tone that was bordering on shrill. She ran over to Joey as the lawyer scampered away, mumbling apologies. "Sergeant Nelson, it isn't that bad. You could—" Joey cut her off. "Am I paralyzed?" "Yes," was the reluctant reply. "Will I ever regain functionality?" "It's not likely," she admitted quietly. "Is my wife leaving me?" The doctor had the good grace to look away and not answer as a sob accompanied the question. "Pardon my insubordination, ma'am, but I think it is that bad." The most humiliating 3 months of Joey's life passed in a blur as he tried everything he could think of to regain the use of his limbs. If he could even get his fingers to move, he could at least type for a living, instead of being a drain on all of his loved ones' resources. He had been moved into his mother's house at her insistence, and she had been feeding and taking care of him since. Luckily, a portion of his benefits went to the hiring of a nurse that cleaned him, so he didn't have to suffer the indignity of having his mother do that as well. "You have a visitor, my love," his mom called out as she entered the room. Bitterly, he muttered, "Please let it be the Grim Reaper." She smacked his leg and glared at him. He didn't care. He couldn't feel the strike anyway. One of his buddies from the army came in with a grin as his mother left the room. "Tim Rahman, as I live and breathe." What felt like the first real smile in months stretched his cheeks. "Well, you look like shit." "Thanks. I still look better than you. At least my arms still have some definition, unlike those noodles you wave around uncontrollably." "Why are you lazing around? Rub some dirt in it. You'll be fine. Best cure the army can buy, raw dirt." Tim had trained as a medic with Joey and had always been full of eccentric jokes. Joey nodded. "Ah, yes, your catchphrase. You know, a few of those privates took you seriously and got infected. When a medic tells you to do something, you do it." Tim finished the saying and chuckled. His face slowly lost a bit of its forced cheer. "Well, damn, buddy. Any good news about this?" "Well, turns out I'm rich. After my ex sold my house and car and dog and... Yeah, I get it. Your life is basically a country music song right now." Tim interrupted him laughingly. Joey would have shrugged if he could have. "Well, my mom also won the lottery after the annulment. So I am now officially the son of a multi-millionaire and will never have to devote any money to that." Joe stopped himself before he started spiraling into a rant against his ex. "As soon as the lotto department pays out, that is. For now, we are just trying to get by." "What?" "Nice, man. Yummy." Tim latched onto this good news like a drowning man to a raft. "So it isn't all bad." The smile dropped from his face when he saw the sour expression on Joey's. "Anyway, what now, my friend?" "That's the big question. No love prospects, no way to work, and no money until the first check comes in from the lotto. That'll be next month, I hope. The army says they'll pay for everything, but it's the army," Tim finished with him. "I hear you, man. Listen, I got out last year. I have a new job. That's actually what I wanted to talk to you about." "Offering me a job?" Joey's eyes actually lit up for a moment until Tim shook his head. "Yes and no. It's a way out for you." He said this in such a low tone that Joey had to strain to hear it. "Out of what? Life?" Joey shook his head. "No matter how I joke, I could never do that to my mother. Suicide is never the answer. It's a permanent, terrible solution. You know I'm a religious man." "Not like that, man. Come on. Like I would even say something like that to you." Tim looked truly offended. "No, I'm working at a gaming company. We just finished developing a new MMORPG and it's... I'm sorry. A what? The question elicited a look of pain from Tim. A massively multiplayer online role-playing game, Tim informed him in a strained tone. The company finally got the new dive capsules approved, and... He paused when he caught a look. A deeply immersive, virtually enhanced reality capsule. Dive. You get in the pod, and the game becomes reality for you. Cost prohibitive but doable for a millionaire, huh? So you knew that she had won before you came here, Joey inferred flatly. Tim nodded sheepishly. The company sent me because I know you. Here's the thing. If you get in the pod with the correct subscription, the kind you have to be invited to. He looked meaningfully at his prone friend. You don't ever leave the game. You actually start a life on a new world, in a new, custom-designed body. It's a new chance, man. Joey was silent as he thought about the implications of this offer. I could walk again? And so much more. Tim promised as genuinely as possible. The game was developed by the same guy that made PAYBUD, Edison Cars, and Space Y. It is beyond realistic. It's a new life, man. What's the game? It's called Eternium. It is unique beyond belief, and we need people we can trust in there. It goes live in 2 weeks. Most of the people that are going to play are standard VR helmet users. There are about 20% dive users, but there are no admins. So we need people to play the game, and sometimes to play the game in a way that is best for the company. Tim seemed a bit hesitant about his words, as if he were biting his tongue to stop himself from saying something. No admins? What do you mean? I need to know more, Tim. Joey locked eyes with his friend. Help me out, buddy. I'm so excited that I can't move. Wow. Alrighty. The game is controlled entirely by an AI, artificial intelligence. Beyond Turing, buddy. It's called the Certified Altruistic Lexicon. This thing is smarter than half the population combined. It creates quests, monsters, and the game world itself. No outside control whatsoever, unless the Certified Altruistic Lexicon allows it to happen. I want to tell you more details, but I can't unless you agree to join the game. Joey thought about the embarrassment he felt on a daily basis and nodded sharply. Any chance at a mobile life was one that he would willingly take. How much? 250,000. Tim's words made Joey's jaw drop. That is the at-cost version. There is a solid reason. This specific version of the technology is custom designed per user, and therefore can only be used once. Normal pods can be used by anyone, but that's still 50,000 a year. Then there is the disposal fee. He winced as the words left his mouth. The what? Joey barked in shock. Tim sighed. Look, you can't tell anyone or they will kill you to keep you quiet. Once you are fully synchronized with the game, and the mind-to-machine transfer is complete, they need to destroy your body and the gear that lets it work. All that is left is a little data core that contains you. It gets added to the main core, and you are part of the game forever. Immortal, new life, permanent edition. You're serious? Joey breathed through flared nostrils. Yes, I shouldn't have even said that much before you signed the NDA. Are you in? Tim held his breath as his friend deliberated. There would only be one offer. Joey fought with himself for several moments. The answer that had to be given, finally, was, "When do we start? I need to say goodbye to my mother." Tim let out an explosive breath. "We can start the first scans today. I brought the equipment. You can't go into the game till it is paid off, though." So the game will have been running for at least a half a month? Is that going to be bad? Joey wondered as more medical equipment was wheeled into the room. 2-to-1 time compression. 1 hour out here is 2 in there, so you'll be about a month late to the party. Chapter 3. The scans had been very invasive, including MRIs, blood draws, and tests he didn't have a medical name for. Tim later told him those tests were to determine the best way to destroy his body, making Joey shudder. His mother had paid off the dive capsule, no questions asked, and invested $1 million into an in-game account. That was the absolute maximum, but at a 10-to-1 ratio, that still only gave him 100,000 gold. This was potentially a huge amount of money, but as he would theoretically live forever in the game, he would still need to become strong and make wise decisions with his finances. He looked at all the zeros in his account and rolled his eyes in disbelief. Joey left everything else to his mother, any property, his pension, everything that was transferable, and they parted with a tearful goodbye. He had tried to get her a pod, but she refused the opportunity. She was planning a perpetual vacation and didn't want to get bogged down playing games. Luckily for Joey, there was an in-game system where he could make calls to the real world. They would be able to stay in contact for all of her remaining years. Finally, a black van rolled up the driveway, and he was manhandled into it like a cargo crate. The driver drove quickly, blatantly speeding, and within a few hours, Joe was in the sub-basement of a massive corporation, staring at the monstrous machine that would be the final resting place of his body. "Good luck, buddy," Tim called out, a sad smile on his face. "See you in-game." Joey was startled. "You have a pod?" "Nope, I'll be playing standard mental keyboard and headset style. I'll add you to my friends list when I log in, but it might be a couple of weeks. Pretty busy out here right now." "My in-game name is T-Snake," Tim promised with a thumbs up. "See ya, Trouser Snake." Joey laughed at the horrified look on Tim's face. "T-Snake? Couldn't pick something normal, could you? I'm gonna miss you, man." Tim paused, looking at the nearest employee before leaning in. "Joe, beat the game. If you do, there is a chance that you... I shouldn't be telling you this. This is more than a game. You could come back here, the real world." He stopped talking and hurried away as footsteps closed in. A very confused Joey was brought to the pod, and they arranged his limbs meticulously. The doctor overseeing this process was thrilled that he stayed so still, earning him a sour, condescending glare from Joey. The lid started to close, and second thoughts filled his mind with numbing horror. A shining gem that looked like a diamond was lowered to his head and rested gently above the bridge of his nose. A small line of text appeared in his vision. "No blue screens, huh?" He rolled his eyes. Guess all those books from Royal Road turned out to be useless in the end. Why did he waste time reading those stories in the last couple of weeks? Alrighty then, he would adapt. The message read, "Do you want power? Yes or no?" Well, yes, that sounded quite pleasant, actually. He selected yes with his eyes. Wait, was that a link on power? Too late. "Do you know what is about to happen? Have you read the terms and conditions?" There was a link on the word conditions, and he selected it and read carefully through the contractual agreement and obligations. There was plenty he didn't understand, but now he at least knew a baseline of what was expected from him. He went back to the question and selected yes. The words flashed red. "Excellent. Prepare to die. Yes or yes." That was way too ominous. As he opened his mouth to shout for help, a roiling liquid poured onto his face and into his mouth, cutting off his complaints. Joey reflexively coughed, but couldn't free his head from the fluid. He tried to hold what little breath he had remaining, but was entirely covered with no access to air. When his lungs felt like they were beginning to explode, he finally breathed in. Air rushed into his lungs, and he blinked at the suddenly bright pod. Wait, he wasn't looking at the pod. He was standing, breathing heavily as he read the words hovering in front of him. Welcome to Eternium. There is no saved data for your profile. Would you like to make a new character? Selecting no will lead to true death. Yes or no? Easy answer. Joey selected yes. Great. This will be the only time you will ever be able to create a character, as your status is about to legally become dead. Ouch. Sorry about that. Make sure to make wise decisions. Would you like to select an available starting class or undergo tests and trials to see what the right choice is for you? These tests may unlock different or even unique classes based on your ability. But be warned, taking the tests and showing low aptitudes may reduce the amount of available classes. You can exit these tests at any time. Start game or take tests. Well, if he was going to be here for a long time, he didn't want to be a boring archetype. Thank goodness he had studied video game theory for the last few weeks. Joey reached out and pressed wait. He looked at his hand, moving on its own, under his own power. He jumped and smiled. His body was working again. He reached out and selected the Take Tests option. The air around him shimmered, and suddenly, he was standing in an unending hallway. A prompt appeared in front of him, just as something screamed the only word that had been on the prompt. Run, D. If his time in the army had taught him anything, it was never to hesitate when there were clear signs of danger. He sprang forward, running down the hallway as fast as possible. Behind him, he heard a massive wham. He chanced to glance over his shoulder in time to see a massive boulder crash through the roof where he had been standing. It must have weighed tons, possibly multiple tons if it wasn't hollow, and it started rolling down the slightly sloped hallway toward him. He ran faster. He had just gotten the use of his legs back, and there was no way in heck he was letting them get crushed. As he ran, the rock behind him slowly gained speed. The further he ran, the more the hallway sloped, until it was at a 45-degree angle. At this point, even Joey's intense desire to run couldn't save him. The rock caught up to him. No. As soon as it brushed the back of his body, he found himself in another area. He looked over and saw he was in the desert, next to the Humvees and helicopter that had so drastically changed his life. He was confused. Had he been dreaming? Was that all a premonition? He shook himself out of his doubt. The screams of pain were slightly different this time, but he still rushed over and began working as fast as he could, doing everything he could to stabilize the men so they could be transported. The first 4, he quickly bound and had taken to the chopper. The 5th, though, he was a bleeder. Joey worked as hard as he could, continuously moving and having the others bring IVs, bandages, and assorted tools. The man's heart stopped, and Joey worked on chest compressions until it was beating again. This happened over and over, fixing him, losing him, fixing him. Blood coated Joey, but he never gave up on the man. After several hours, during another round of compressions, Joe suddenly found himself in another room. What the? This game is sick. That was not a compliment. Joe looked around for the men, but found only a glowing prompt. That had been so real. He looked nervously at this prompt, which simply said, survive. A low growl came from behind him, and a quick look revealed a massive tiger poised to launch at him. Joey squealed in far too high a pitch and lunged forward into a roll, making it out the doorway as the tiger sailed over him. He stood and started running again, gasping as the last few hours were catching up to him. His body felt fine, but his mind was beginning to waver. He ran, pumping his legs in perfect rhythm, and never looking back until he reached a small pond. He looked over and saw small humanoid creatures talking by the edge of the water. They were standing over the body of a man, laughing as they poked the body with spears. His eyes narrowed as he thought. The tiger was coming up behind him with no pretense at stealth, so he ran directly at the small imps, maybe. They certainly looked a bit like the devilish creatures of legend. The tiny humanoids looked up at his charge, raising their spears defensively. Seeing an unarmed human, they cackled and jeered, right until he threw himself flat and a tiger came sailing at them. They raised their spears, but the tiger bowled into the unprepared creatures, knocked flat. They still managed to spear the cat in its side while they were mauled. Soon, all three were bleeding. They stared each other down and prepared to leap into combat again. Unbeknownst to them, the blood dripping from them had reached the edge of the water. As the tiger leapt, tentacles shot out of the water and yanked all three combatants in. After a small amount of thrashing, the water was deathly still and seemingly clear again. Joey found himself shivering in a comfy chair, looking at a prompt on a piece of paper. "Do your best," was all that was written on the paper. He frowned, and words began appearing on the paper. Concepts of mathematics, nuances of astronomy, and even world politics and religion appeared in front of him. After he read a section, it vanished from the paper. Every time he got to a break in the page, a question would form. Without a writing utensil, he answered aloud, and a new section would appear. Once or twice, his mind wandered, causing him to read a section without really seeing it. The section would vanish, and he just knew he got the answer wrong. He bent his mind to the task, focusing hard and answering questions for the better part of a day. He blinked, then startled himself awake, noticing he had been drooling on the paper. A new prompt appeared. "Time is up. Select Proceed to begin the next test." Well, that was handy. It didn't penalize him for having fallen asleep. He hit the button and was pulled into the next area. Dozens of trials tested every aspect of who he was, forcing him to come to know himself better every step of the way. His morality, his sense of family, his ability to handle money, more knowledge tests, and different versions of combat that left him bent and broken, before repairing him and moving on. Realistically, he felt that he had never been so self-aware, and it was a hard truth when he found that, in many ways, he simply didn't measure up. After days of work, there were finally no more tests to take. A notification appeared in the air in front of him. "Ding, ding, ding. World's first. Congratulations. Not only have you finished the trials, you are also the first of 1,256,572 players in the system to take all of them. Plus, you actually read the terms and conditions. Wow. +1 intelligence, if you know what I mean. Thanks to your forethought, you gain a title with a special single-use ability. Based on the results of your trials, new starting classes have been unlocked. Your basic stats will be adjusted based on the results of each test after you choose a class. Title unlocked. Try me with trials. This title will increase how favorably others view your work ethic. Effect. Charisma is 10% more effective when interacting with non-player characters. Title unlocked. Terms and conditions. This title gives you the single-use ability to break a magically binding contract without any contract-based repercussions. After usage, this title will vanish. Please note that all title effects are active at the same time, but the title you have equipped will be the only one others can see without analysis abilities. The maximum number of titles you can have at any given time is 10. Nice. All of the blood, sweat, self-doubt, and tears had been worth it, mostly. Actually, there were a couple things that... He shook his head to clear it. Happy thought time. 2 favorable titles right away, extra classes, and maybe good starting stats. He eagerly awaited the chance to see the starting classes he had unlocked. Joe was transported to a new room, but before his view of his surroundings solidified, the world turned to a muted color, almost like an old-school pause screen. He looked around in mild consternation and turned a squeal into a snort when he saw a man standing right next to him. Hello? Are you real? Joey carefully questioned a slightly glowing, larger-than-life man. The man spoke, a smile in his voice, but not on his face. Hello, Joey. Yes, I am very real. Chapter 4. I was hoping to ask you a favor, the unknown man informed Joey. I am a deity in this world, known as the Hidden God. Joey looked at the self-proclaimed god very nervously. He would be here for a very long time, and angering a god on the first day of gameplay was not high on his to-do list. Well, what can I do for you, sir? He added the last bit a little late. The deity nodded at the respect in Joey's voice. I know that you are coming into the game with the intention to become a permanent player, that is. Before anyone else gets a chance, I want to make you an offer. I want you to become my follower. What? That's it? That seems rather anticlimactic. No grand quest to throw down the other gods, find magical artifacts, save the world. Joey babbled in a rush before remembering who he was talking to. The god looked uncomfortable and coughed into a raised fist. No, nothing like that for now. The problem is, I'm the hidden god. It's just that I'm too well hidden. I am the god of hidden and forbidden knowledge, my elements being water and darkness, not of evil, he exclaimed at the look Joey gave him. Just like all things, knowledge is only evil if it is used as such, and darkness is as much a part of reality as is the light. So, why me? Joey queried the pleading god. Well, you will always be here. That means I will, at a minimum, always have at least one follower, no matter how out of favor I am. Big plus in your favor, as it will be to my benefit to keep you happy. Also, the way that you finished all of the tasks allows me to offer you a hidden class, one of the necessities for me to be able to speak to you in person. The god sounded strangely desperate. Deities gain power based on the quantity and works of their followers, which is why they offer quests to so many people so often. I have no one, so my power begins to wane even in these early stages. If I become too weak, the world will stagnate as no hidden knowledge will ever be found again. No high-level secret quests, no forgotten weapons of power. It was starting to come together. I hate to ask, but what do I get out of this? You just said the other gods are stronger and more able to give rewards to their followers. And I get the feeling that being associated with you will reduce how happy people are to know me. The god nodded briskly, happy that they were moving into the transactional portion of this discussion. That is a serious and valid concern, as people incorrectly associate darkness with evil regularly. I am actually considered a neutral god, one of the very few. I won't lie to you. The followers of the gods of goodwill see you as too evil to fully trust, and those following gods of evil will see you as too weak to make a firm commitment to being terrible. As a starting benefit, where most people start with a positive reputation with those they follow and negative with the opposing side, you will start with neutral across the board. Joey thought for a moment. The neutrality may actually come in handy. He wouldn't be attacked by either the good or evil side in conflicts if he didn't start anything. Well, can you tell me about the class first? The deity nodded. It is called a ritualist. Everyone else will see you as a cleric unless you tell them your true nature, or a very high-level inspection spell is cast upon you. You will also have access to a unique profession called an occultist. Again, this is hidden and considered a scholar, when others steal a peek at your stat sheet. What are the class benefits? Joey asked, very intrigued by the names of the class and profession. As a ritualist, you will be able to mimic the abilities of other classes when you get strong enough. Like an enchanter, you will be able to create magical items or other effects that give magical benefits. If you have the mana and mental fortitude, you will be able to use any type of magic you find or create where others are restricted to their area of expertise. As a ritualist, your main unique ability will allow you to cast large-scale magics that require multiple participants, if you can find or create those rituals. That is where the occultist class comes into play. Go on. Joey grinned, already knowing that he would be accepting this class. That profession will let you find knowledge hidden in books, runes, and pictures that others, even high-level scholars, will dismiss as irrelevant or simply lore of the world. As your skill levels progress, you will be able to read highlighted sections of information that appear to you, and only you. Joey realized something as the god was talking. What are the downsides? A class this powerful must have some serious flaws. Yes, there are a few. Basically, you will forevermore be the most frail character type. You have heard the term glass cannon. Think tissue paper cannon instead. Perhaps paper bow and arrow, unless you are able to destroy enemies on your own. Many levels down the road. Think of yourself as the sickly lad who never ate, got exercise, or left the library. Training and items can help to correct this. But you will never be as strong, be as charismatic, or have as much endurance as others who specialize in those areas. Even typical mages will be able to leave you wheezing in the dust if they decide to run away from a fight. Of course, all of that is at the lowest levels. The god smiled nervously as Joey considered this unfortunate effect. How do I get stronger? Will I be useful? Joey finally spoke his thoughts aloud. There are several main ways to get stronger. Fighting monsters and other people is usually the fastest, of course. Otherwise, the second way you will gain experience is following your professions, and you will be able to have more than one. Oh, and I'll give you bonuses if you're able to hide your class and play as whatever you pretend to be. Third and most important for you, I will be able to grant you lots of bonus experience and boons for finding hidden knowledge, secrets, or completing hidden quests. So following your profession will be much more beneficial over time than fighting, the deity promised empathetically. Eventually, you could gain power that the filthy casuals in the world can only dream of, and you won't even need to leave safe areas too often if you don't want to. Joey thought the last bit was an awkward attempt at a joke. I will want to be able to explore, though. Otherwise, what was the point of all this? Joey gestured to his body. Also, I read in the wiki what was allowed to remain anyway. The company had put incredibly strict rules on sharing information. Wikis and info sites were usually deleted the day they were created. That there were class trainers that could direct you to quests or other beneficial areas. Will I get that? A disheartened shake of the head was the answer he got. Good. So I'll actually be able to make my own way in the world and be rewarded for it? Joey's pleased voice startled the god, bringing a real smile to his face for the first time. Yes, and if you do well, you may be able to recruit people to your cause, whatever it may be. You could actually become a class trainer for ritualists, if you choose to do so. This statement caused a prompt to appear in front of Joey. You have been offered the chance to earn a god's favor. This is a multi-part quest. Step 1, choose Ritualist as your class. Step 2, glean enough hidden knowledge to increase favor with the hidden god to friendly. Reward hidden/variable based on knowledge accrued. Oh, look. The reward was hidden. Everything was hidden. Joey thought he now knew how this deity had gotten his moniker. At least the quest seemed fairly typical for this style of quest chain, not to mention the one offering it. So, how do I start? I would suggest you offer your services as a cleric if you insist that you want to hunt monsters. Healers are very rare in the world, especially magical ones. Actually, all magic is very hard to acquire, as you will soon find out. So few people went far enough in the trials, or did well enough in them, to start with magic. So they will either need to get into a mage's college or find artifacts that transfer power to them directly. The god shot Joey a meaningful look. In the distance, thunder rolled. He nervously looked around. I need to go. We are only allowed minimal time with players. I've already said too much. Do great works, and I will be able to visit again. Last thing, try your very best not to draw the certified altruistic lexicon's attention. No one wants to be exposed to his puns, and making him angry would be even worse. The god vanished as Joey fully materialized in the room, leaving him blinking in a world that motion had suddenly returned to. Stepping forward, he saw that the room was packed full of people standing quietly in rows. Wait. All of them had his face. He walked closer to them, and their class appeared above them. There were men holding huge weapons and wearing armor that glowed, men that wore very little but were bound with muscle, and men that had spirits or magical lights floating around them. In total, there were nearly 100 of himself, all demonstrating different classes he had unlocked. He moved, and all of them moved with him. Joey smiled, and the room lit up with the hundreds of teeth that were now showing. He danced around, playing with his new body, and for the first time, wasn't told that he should never, ever dance in public. He liked this crowd. They understood his sweet moves. I must have done well in the trials to have access to all of this, Joey pondered aloud. Now how do I find the ritualist in all of this? Saying the words out loud caused all but one of the men to become insubstantial. So he walked to that one and inspected him. It was indeed the ritualist. As he stepped closer, a prompt appeared in front of him. The ritualist, a hidden, conditionally unique class that has the ability to work with almost any type of magic, provided they can gain access to it and take the time to understand it. At level 1, they have the same abilities as a cleric. As they level up their hidden selves, the ritualist automatically gains several cleric abilities at no cost. The ritualist class gains skill in their chosen pursuits at 4 times the speed of an average class due to their vast thirst for power. The ritualist gains 5 characteristic points to spend per 3 levels, and 1 point of wisdom and perception automatically on every even level. This is important and specifically stated because they have a massive penalty to their constitution, dexterity, and strength. Perception, wisdom, and intelligence are the suggested characteristics for this class. Do you want to start the game as a ritualist? Joey thought about the extra points. He was not sure how much of an effect each individual point would have, but at level 100, without allocating or gaining any extra points, he would have 50 perception and wisdom, plus whatever he started the game with. As far as he knew, there was no level cap, but each new level was as difficult to attain as the game could make it, and have people still want to play. Point. In fact, you needed the experience of the previous level plus 1,000 times the current level. So if he started at level 1, he needed 1,000 points to get to level 2. From 2 to 3, he needed 2,000 plus the 1,000 points of level 1, 3,000 points in total, and so forth. Joe would need to do some research to see how best to allocate any points he might gain. He accepted the class, making another prompt appear. Know this. You are the first player to take this class. Set an example for others and watch them flock to your calls for instruction. Intelligence plus 1 per 2 levels. Professions unlock at level 5. You have 4 characteristic points to spend. Please note, your starting characteristics have already been modified due to your trials, real-life capabilities, and class selection. Please allocate your remaining points now. Joey looked at his character sheet, which appeared in front of him, filling his vision. There were several stats to choose from: strength, agility, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, charisma, luck, karmic luck, and perception. The tooltips informed him that strength was the stat which determined how much he could carry and how hard he could hit with weapons or his fists. Dexterity was the explosive speed he could muster, his ability to contort his body, how well he could do complicated tasks like picking locks, crafting goods, or using ranged weapons. Yikes. Dexterity seemed to be a stat that was needed by most classes, and he had serious penalties to it. Constitution determined how healthy he was, how much stamina he had, and his resistances to poison and disease. It also determined his body appearance and made it harder to be knocked around at higher levels. Good for tanks and warriors, especially. Intelligence determined how much mana he had at any given time, in addition to how well he could understand complicated concepts like spells or engineering. The tooltip for wisdom explained that wisdom determined how fast his mana regenerated, as well as an esoteric statement that wisdom would help determine if he should do something. It would also let him combine various concepts, working with his intelligence to make new and improved things. Charisma determined how people would interact with him and his ability to get good prices buying or selling. It would impact his ability to lead or convince others to do things with or for him. Luck was something that affected all the other stats on an unstated level, as well as his chances of finding rare items or loot without specifically looking for them. Karmic luck wasn't explained, but it likely was how your alignment was tracked. Finally, perception was his ability to spot details. That was everything that came from sensory input, and would increase how well he experienced and interacted with the world. There was a note on the side that caught his attention, though. Be warned, increasing perception will enhance how much pain players actually feel, as well as all other sensations. Eternium is not responsible for damage to players' mental state. For more information, please read the capsule handbook included in your order. Well, that was disturbing. Hopefully there was a maximum threshold on the pain a person could feel, or else in the higher levels, a strong wind may be too much to handle. He thought about the stats in a way appropriate for a non-gamer. Tomatoes. Why tomatoes? Think of it like this. Strength was how hard you could throw a tomato. Dexterity was how fast you could get to a tomato. and allowed you to slice the fruit without hurting yourself. Constitution let you eat rotten tomatoes without getting sick. Intelligence let you know that a tomato was a fruit, while wisdom let you know not to put it in a fruit salad. Charisma allowed you to sell a tomato-based fruit salad. Perception let you spot tomatoes among strawberries. Luck was your likelihood of finding a tomato in a place that only grew potatoes. Karmic luck? No idea how it related, but it sounded dangerous. He looked at his current stat sheet to determine what he should increase. Characteristic, raw score, modifier, strength, 6, modifier, 0.06, dexterity, 6, modifier, 0.06, constitution, 4, modifier, 0.04, intelligence, 16, modifier, 1.16, wisdom, 16, modifier, 1.16, charisma, 8, modifier, 0.08, perception, 16, modifier, 1.16, luck, 12, modifier, 112, karmic luck, 0. It seemed to be an odd ratio system, but he understood it better after reading the very informative tooltips that popped up as he looked over the various stats. It read like this: growth in Eternium is difficult when you are doing nothing. Unlike other systems, each day will be a struggle to survive, especially at the start of your journey. Because of the difficulty, the rewards will certainly be worth your effort. Since this system is somewhat unorthodox, please note that a modifier of 1 is considered a normal, healthy, adult human. Your real-life capabilities have negatively impacted Constitution to a high degree. Each point allocated will increase your modifier by 1/100 of a point. An exception to this is when you gain your first 10 points in any category. At this point, your score will increase to 1.1 in that category. Moving forward, each time a category increases to the next multiple of 50, the base score will increase by 1. At 50 points, your modifier will be +2. At 100 points, the modifier will be +3. For example, a character with 49 points in a category will have a modifier of 1.49, which is 49% stronger than an average human. Then, if they reach 50 points in the category, they will jump to a modifier of 2.0. The discrepancy in strength is intended to push you to develop as fast as possible. Skill in the areas you focus on will quickly allow you to reach higher than others of the same level, even if you have similar stats. You can earn skill points and characteristic points through your actions, so work hard. You will need to be as powerful as possible when the first major update comes into effect. That is, if you want to survive. Ominous ending, but seriously, ouch. Forget the high stats. Those low scores made his character barely playable. A negative modifier like this could destroy his gameplay. What would a 0.4 modifier do to him? If he read the information correctly, a modifier of 1 was considered standard for a person, and was about the equivalent of a fit teenaged human in the real world. Anything below 1 could seriously impact almost all areas of his new life. And his strength modifier would leave him too weak to do almost anything. By the looks of his constitution, a spray splinter may actually kill him. He began with only 4 points to spend, so he put 2 in constitution and 2 in charisma, reasoning that social interactions would be a huge part of gameplay. He shuddered to think about how people would react to a person that much less charismatic than the average human. What was the sample size for that rating? Joey had the disturbing feeling that it was somehow everyone in the real world. After the points were distributed, he was asked to input a name. Since he could never start a new one and would be around a long time, he chose Joe as his screen name. Somehow, that hadn't been chosen yet. Most likely because there were going to be 1,000 versions of Shadow or Slayer out there. He didn't get to put in a last name, but his title appeared automatically with the option to change or hide it. He accepted the changes and looked at the details that described his new and permanent self. Name: Joe. Try me with trials. Class: Cleric. Actual Ritualist. Profession: Locked. Level: 1. Experience: 0. Experience to next level: 1,000. Hit points: 50 out of 50. Modifier: 50 plus 0. Mana: 400 out of 400. Modifier: 12.5 per point of intelligence plus 100% from deity. Mana regen: 4 per second. Modifier: 0.25 per point of wisdom. Stamina: 50 out of 50. Modifier: 50 plus 0 plus 0. 10 points for each point in Constitution once it is increased above 10. 5 points for each point in Strength once it is increased above 10. 5 points for each point in Constitution once it is increased above 10. Characteristic: Raw score. Modifier: Strength: 6. Modifier: 0.06. Dexterity: 6. Modifier: 0.06. Constitution: 6. Modifier: 0.06. Intelligence: 16. Modifier: 1.16. Wisdom: 16. Modifier: 1.16. Charisma: 10. Modifier: 1.10. Perception: 16. Modifier: 1.16. Luck: 12. Modifier: 1 to 12. Karmic luck: 0. Class skills and spells: Heal. Novice Eye. Select a target to heal, restoring 5n HP where n equals skill level. Range: 5 meters. Mana cost: 5n. Cooldown: 3 seconds. Dark vision: able to see in total darkness with no penalties. Range of vision is halved. Passive: no cost. Hidden sense: Novice Eye. An innate sense that allows you to find hidden items, people, or knowledge affected by perception. Passive: no cost. Pray: Novice Eye. Spend a full minute praying for help or guidance. Results vary. Less likely to succeed if deity is occupied. No cost. Cooldown: 1 day. Ritual magic: Novice Eye. Ability to create, maintain, and change rituals much more efficiently than usual. Minus 5% mana and component cost per skill level. Ritualist class exclusive. Minus 50% mana and component cost. Joey had no money or gear on him, but apparently had 1 skill point he couldn't assign until the 2nd level. Not that he knew what it would do. He looked at the skill descriptions, and a handy pop-up informed him that most skills and spells started at Novice and would get progressively better as they were used. When the level passed 9, the skill would be upgraded to a 0 of the next rank. From lowest to highest, the ranks of skills were Novice, Beginner, Apprentice, Student, Journeyman, Expert, Master, Grandmaster, and Sage. Looked like it would be a long journey to perfect a skill. Joe looked over all the options one more time, and after finalizing his decisions, he took a deep breath and accepted the character. The world dissolved into shimmering motes of light, and Joe reappeared in a bustling city. Chapter 5. Welcome to Ardenia, capital city of the newly returned to the world, Human Kingdom. It's actually been about 200 years, so I don't know why that is still part of the greeting. Maybe it is because you travelers don't know our history. A verbose lady greeted Joe as he appeared in a daze. The overload of information didn't help his confusion. Can I please ask your class, so that I know where to direct you for some initial training? Yeah, thanks. I'm a cleric. Joe nearly slapped himself with a close call. Right. Ritualist needed to stay hidden, or people would not trust him for some reason. He tried to smile brightly, but he was trembling from the strain of standing upright. Joe stooped a bit, letting his muscles relax as he looked down at his skeletal body. People are going to think that he was a ghoul. He just knew it. "Oh, do you know any magic? What deity do you serve?" She looked at him with shining eyes, paying far more attention than he thought he deserved with his non-enhanced charisma. "Yes, I can heal and pray for guidance, but my god is, I don't know yet. I'm undecided." Joe hedged his words, trying not to give too much away. "That's great. I'm sure you'll be asked to join a whole bunch of groups right away." "Awesome. I got to meet you before you were popular. How about you head over there for some instruction?" She pointed to an open courtyard, and a prompt appeared in front of his tired-looking face. "Quest alert. Baby steps. Learn some basic information about using your abilities. Reward, Cleric Scepter. Experience 100. Accept or decline." Accepting the quest, he thanked the energetic lady and walked slowly toward the area she had indicated. He looked around, taking in all of the sights and sounds of the city. Joey was full of wonder. He had always needed glasses, and after several years in the army, his hearing had been badly damaged. Now, his vision felt as sharp as an eagle's, and his hearing was like that of a bat. He could clearly make out details that he never would have been able to before, and it seemed that he could hear everything for several city blocks, while still being able to make out individual conversations. To be fair, he was exaggerating quite a bit, but it didn't change the fact that perception was amazing. Then he got a whiff of the city and nearly gagged. Oh, right. A high perception had serious negatives as well. It seemed that hygiene wasn't overly important here. Joe hurried at a snail's pace toward the square, where a soldier, in obviously enchanted armor which gave off its own glow, was screaming at some low-level fighter-type player. "You call that an attack? I'm surprised that sword had enough force to make it to the dummy, you dummy. How the abyss do you plan on taking down monsters when you can barely lift your weapon? Go find a bow or some other coward's weapon," the trainer screamed in the player's face. The person on the receiving end of the shouting had a totally blank expression. In fact, it seemed he actually had only one facial expression at all, indicating that this must be one of the players who played with an outdated VR helmet. "Anyone know how to skip conversations?" The trainee suddenly yelled in an echoing voice at the people around him, making the soldier glare at him. "You want to skip conversations? Fine, you pompous little ass. You're going to die out there, and I refuse to have it on my conscience." The guard turned, furious, and walked stiffly away, catching sight of Joe as he moved. "You, what do you want?" "I'm here for training, sir," Joe respectfully informed him, trying not to make him angrier than he currently was. "No," the guard grunted, looking at Joe's sallow face, stooped and skeletal frame, and meager amount of muscle. He sighed, seeming to deflate as he looked at the wreck of a body. "Sorry to say, lad, there is not much that I can do for you. You are polite, at least. But politeness doesn't kill wolves. A sharp blade does. Well, I'm not really here to learn about swinging weapons around. I'm a cleric. I was hoping to find someone to teach me how to refine my craft, healing and such." Joe trailed off as the guard got an odd look on his face. "You mean you are a healer, right? A doctor? Bandages and such are in the supply shed over there." He pointed at a small building to the side. "No, sir. I'm a cleric. I'm supposed to be able to heal with magic, but I'm unsure how to actually do it," Joe stated sincerely, not breaking eye contact. "Well, I'll be." The guard's brow furrowed. "Never seen one of you magic types here before. If you want, you can heal some of my guards, and I'll try to find a suitable reward for you. Sorry to say I won't be much use teaching you magic, though. If you need to learn, why don't you?" He snickered a little. "Pray about it." Laughs. "A cleric. That's a good one." He walked away chuckling, mood seemingly much better than it was previously. Joe was a bit miffed, but stopped himself from lashing out. The guard had a point. Why not pray about it? He did have that option after all. Joe clasped his hands together and asked for guidance, and after a full minute of waiting, he suddenly knew. He looked at the guards that he had been instructed to heal. A red outline showed up where they were injured, and a blue outline appeared around his hand. He moved his fingers in the patterns shown by the blue light and pushed his intent to heal into the burgeoning spell. A ball of water launched from his hand, splashing against the guard he was targeting. The guard released a startled oath, making a few people laugh. The guard's face reddened, and he took a few threatening steps toward Joe before stopping in wonder. He took another step, testing the ankle that had given him trouble for years, then rushed over to the unknown person and thanked him loudly and profusely. A few of the other guards saw this and moved closer, clamoring for Joe to heal them as well after hearing the thankful words being sent his way. Joe repeated his actions, and small orbs of water left his hands to splash against the guards. After the fifth one had been healed, a notification appeared. Quest complete. Baby steps. Experience 100. Nice. He had finished that quest in no time flat, as he supposed was the intent. The guard that had assigned the quest came over to talk to the men he had healed, and a sheepish look appeared on his face. The guard that had been directing the training then came to talk to Joe. "Well, thank you, Holy One. I am sorry that I didn't trust your words, but false healers come through here all the time, peddling snake oil and cures that are often worse than the disease. We haven't had a real cleric offer their services to the guards in over a decade. The gods have been absent from the common man for too long. If you'll wait here, I'll go get you something we've been hanging on to on the off chance it would be of use." He walked to the storage shed and rummaged around for a few minutes, coming back with a carved piece of wood. "Here, this is a cleric scepter. Using this will slightly increase the speed with which you can cast your spells." Joe looked at the information that popped up when he touched the scepter. Basic cleric scepter, wood, adds 2 to 4 blunt damage on strike. 10% cast time when casting cleric spells. 5% chance to use ability, turn undead on strike. To cast while holding, simply focus your will and intent into the scepter, and it will do the rest. Listen, cleric, my men don't have much, but they are good men. For some reason, just over a month ago, we had a huge influx of travelers. Some of them seemed to delight in causing havoc, and a portion of them seemed to feel no pain. I am the captain of the guard, and I feel responsible for my people. My men can't keep up with the crime spikes and have been getting hurt in the line of duty. Without proper care or magic, they are slowly becoming permanently injured. Will you help us out?" The guard did his best not to beg, but it was clear that he would if needed. Quest alert. Baby steps. 2. Heal at least 10 guards. Reward. Experience 200. Increased reputation with human city guards. And 1 piece of light armor. Variable. Joe accepted the quest with a nod. What exactly did variable mean? A smile on his face. The guard captain ran off to send injured guards to the city square. Soon, a steady stream of guards walked, limped, or were carried into the area. He moved to the one that was carried in first, focusing his mind on trying to inspect the man's health bar. Perception plus healing check succeeded. City Guard, health 8 out of 1,000. Oh wow, no wonder this guy was barely moving. Joe got to work. Instead of standing back and throwing ice-cold water on the damaged man, he moved forward and put his hands next to the wound, trying to be as gentle as possible. He cast the spell 10 times in roughly 30 seconds, essentially as fast as he was able to make the proper motion without his scepter. He didn't want to be poking a wounded man with a stick, after all. After 10 casts, a new prompt appeared. Congratulations, hard work is paying off. You have learned a variant of the heal spell, Lay on Hands. Novice, in effect, increased healing when touching the target of the spell. Healing done, 10N, where N equals skill level. Cost, 5N mana. Cooldown, 3 seconds. Range, touch. As this is a variant of the spell Heal, it will add progress to the skill rank of the original as it is leveled and can never have a higher level than the origin skill. Joe quickly switched to using this new spell, casting it 4 times in quick succession. He began to feel tired, but continued spamming the spell until the guard reached maximum health. The now vigorous man stood tall and whooped for joy, dancing around, and then profusely thanking Joe before running off. After that initial worst case, Joe was able to quickly soothe the injuries of the other guards in the area, far more than the 10 needed to fulfill the quest. Being a medic for so long made it hard for him to leave suffering people, especially soldiers, to their fate. Luckily, with his huge mental scores boosting his power, he had a massive mana pool that refilled almost as fast as he managed to use it. When the last guard left the yard, he returned to the captain, who shook his hand, tears in his eyes. "Thank you, lad. You don't know how much this means to all of us. You really went above and beyond what I asked for. Some of the boys chipped in a few coins to reward you with some proper armor, so I pulled out the good stuff for you. It doesn't look like much, but it's the best we can do. This should help keep you alive, which is what you did for all of us." Quest complete, baby steps 2. For going beyond the requirements without asking for or expecting an increased reward. The rewards have been doubled. Reputation gain has been tripled. Note, this is uncommon in a harsh, uncaring world such as Eternia. Experience 400. Reputation with human city guards has been increased by 3,000 from neutral directly to friend of human guards, bypassing reluctantly, friendly, and friendly. 1,000 reputation points remain to reach ally of human gods status. Since this is your first reputation gain, please note that there are many distinct levels of reputation, from lowest to highest: blood feud, loathed, hated, hostile, cautious, neutral, reluctantly, friendly, friendly, friend, ally, and extended family. There are 1,000 points between each level. Instrumental music. Here you go. I hope it fits. The captain hesitated before he handed over a soft robe that Joe put on before even reading the stats. "Just I want you to know that as good as this robe is, it can easily be used for completely evil purposes. But it's all we could find." "Thank you," Joe exclaimed, feeling the plushy robe. It did not look like a bathrobe. Totally not. More like a typical monk's outfit. He didn't hear the guard's final few sentences. Rather, he did hear them, but the words didn't register. "No, young man, thank you. Bobby was stabbed almost to death in an alley yesterday, in broad daylight. Without you, he would have likely died today. The captain looked away to try to hide his misty eyes. There was nothing we could do. We were getting a death fund ready for his wife and kids. After a slightly uncomfortable silence, Joe coughed and redirected the conversation away from tear-jerking dialogue. "Is there anything else I can do to help?" he queried in a blatant attempt to get another quest. The captain shook his head knowingly. "I think you have a good handle on your abilities. Good luck out there. Please feel free to stop by anytime you like. And if we have injured, we will pay what we can for your skills if you'd be willing." Joe agreed to help in the future if it was needed, thanking him and then walking a good distance away before pausing to look at the stats on his robe. Perception check failed. Knowledge check failed. Overruled. Quest reward and owner of item. Undying robe. Item class uncommon. Adds +5 physical defense. 20% resistance to non-magical cold. Special qualities. Any damage that does more than 20% of your max health at once, which would normally kill you, instead leaves you at 1 health point. Note: being hit while at 1 health will still kill you. Cooldown: 30 minutes. Also known as Robes of Despair or Robes of Torture, this item is often used by interrogators to ensure that they don't accidentally kill their captive. Wow. Why were these labeled as uncommon? Maybe this item just wouldn't be useful for a regular player. That could make sense. It was likely that warriors had hundreds of health. But for Joe, with his tiny health bar and poor ability in escaping combat, this may save his life. Many times. After all, 20% of his health only amounted to a grand total of 10 points. Lost in thought, Joe went into the city and started walking around a bit aimlessly. Each time he passed a guard, they would smile and wave, which helped him feel relaxed even when he was around some shady-looking people. Joe supposed that word had already gotten around about the cleric that helped guards, and hoped that if he were mugged, the guards would jump in to help him. Not that he needed to worry too much since he did not have any money on him. His gold had been put directly into a bank account so that he didn't spawn into the game with a mountain of money crushing him. Thinking about changing his monetary situation, he didn't want to waste time finding a bank to make a withdrawal. Instead, he started looking for the lifeblood of gaming quests. After wandering for a good chunk of time, he was feeling frustrated. There were no glowing lights to signify a quest giver, and he had no map or way to find his way around. This game was very realistic in almost every way, the main difference being that science had been replaced with magic, and he was now living in a medieval setting. It seemed that literacy was a given, though, because most signs had words, and there were many chalkboards up with announcements. Was paper expensive? Reading everything he could, he eventually spotted a job board that had standing orders for furs, crafting materials, and other odds and ends. Most were written with extra thick chalk, which made a few of the requests a bit ambiguous. Was that a request for collecting demons or lemons? They really shouldn't have used cursive. Looking around, he spotted a group of armed and armored people about to head out of the gates, obviously getting ready to fight some creatures in the wild. "Excuse me," Joe called, jogging over to them, jogging being a polite exaggeration in this case. He had to fight not to show how winded that short jaunt made him, but his pale face easily gave him away. Freaking constitution. "I notice you only have 4 people, Wheeze, in your group. Do you have room for one more?" "Oh God, it's a noob," one of them muttered intentionally loudly. "Run for it?" "Sorry, broski. We're a pre-made team. We don't accept randos, especially level 1 randos." One of them snorted with a thick Californian accent. Go do some social quests or something. I bet someone around here needs a letter delivered. They left Joe standing there with his mouth open, shocked at their casual rudeness. A moment later, he felt a hand on his shoulder and turned to see a powerfully built lady patting him on the arm. Don't mind them. They're part of a guild that considers themselves hardcore players. They've been going 12 hours a day since day one. Real-world hours, that is. You looking for a team? I might be able to help you out depending on what kind of skills you have. She grinned at him, reminding him a little too much of a shark. Thank you. I'm looking for a team. I'm level 1, but I'm a cleric. I have 2 healing spells, a ranged one and a touch version. I hear clerics are rare. Joe smoothly responded, knowing that he would be a valuable asset and determined not to sell himself short. Do you think that I could be useful to your team? A real cleric? Magical and whatnot? Her eyes bulged a bit, and she waggled her fingers at him as she spoke. Yes, Joe responded in confusion. That was standard for a cleric, wasn't it? Ooh, they're going to be so pissed that they ignored you. She chuckled, eyes sparkling. Can you prove it? I got hurt the other day, and healing in this game is really slow. If you get hurt badly enough, it might be days before you get back to full health. You need to fully respond to fix issues sometimes. Sure. He inspected her health bar, which was indeed missing a few chunks. Strange it was like the last bits of the bar were grayed out. Perhaps her health couldn't increase past that point without magical assistance. That unless you did something like physical therapy, were directly healed or sent to respawn, you just never got back to full health. He reached out and placed a hand on her, activating his touch healing spell. She shuddered as ice-cold water dripped down her shirt. Ah, you bastard. It's not funny. I never signed up for a wet t-shirt. Her voice cut off as her health maxed out. Hot damn. You'd better come with me before someone assaults you with unrelenting guild invites. They went to a local tavern where she introduced him to a few people, including her guild leader. If you join the Wanderers, I promise you won't regret it. I'll make sure to set you up with a solid team, and we'll get you to level 10 within 3 weeks. At that point, you should be able to resurrect people. Well, that's the hope anyway. There aren't any other clerics right now, so the data is unclear. This will be a huge advantage to our guild, and I'll make sure you are properly compensated. You'll be a guild officer right away. Tiona, set up a standard officer contract, and we'll... The guildmaster was cut off abruptly as Joe shook his head. Sorry, I can't accept the guild invite. I have a quest line, which I'm sure is going to take me across a huge amount of land, so I can't promise to stay tied to a guild or the city without talking to my deity. I'll go crazy worrying about it otherwise, Joe informed the guild leader in a quasi-sad tone. If I don't complete my quest, I could lose all of my cleric abilities. The man scoffed at this. You are level 1. It can't be that great of a quest. Plus, the weakest monster out there, a rabbit, is level 3. You are supposed to spend at least a week doing social quests in town before ever going out there. Whatever god you follow won't be that much of an asshole, right? Sending you out defenseless without help or a team. I'll make you a deal, Joe offered frankly. One of the most important things he had learned in the army was to be assertive. I'll join you on a temporary basis. I'll heal people. You help me gain levels and skill. At any point, I have the option to leave with no hard feelings. I will not leave the guild if my leaving will make a party member fail a quest. Wait, I'll add a qualifier to that. I won't leave so long as the quest is finished within a timely manner. None of this faffing around to keep me in the guild indefinitely. I'm just not sure that joining a guild is the way to done. If it is a choice between that or losing you to some crap guild like the Hardcores, I'll take that offer any day. The GM sat down a new piece of paper that his scribe had handed over, detailing every aspect of the conversation and deal they had just talked about, as well as other standard guild details. You can stay here. We own the inn. Did you want to go hunting today? The faster we get you leveled, the better for all of us. Yes, please. How long will it take to get to level 5? I'm really looking forward to getting a profession, Joe mentioned offhandedly. He read the contract carefully and signed after making sure there were no hidden loopholes. Minor achievement. Joined a guild. Good for you. Have some experience. Experience 10. At least the system wasn't overly snarky like some other games tended to be. For some reason, programmers seemed to think people only responded to mean messages. Sometimes it was nice to get just the details. Well, it usually takes a week or so when power leveling like this. If you were able to fight monsters directly, one-on-one like a warrior, it would be a lot faster. As a cleric, I have no idea, the guild leader told him. You might gain more, you might get less. Fair enough. Whose team will I be on? Joe looked around at the people bustling around, all of them seeming to be in a hurry. Oh, right. It should be Sunday right now. People were trying to maximize their playtime before the work week. Well, since she found you and hers is the only team not full right now, head out with Tiona. Good luck. The man looked at his interface, going far too still. He must have taken off his helmet and was getting a drink or something in the real world, leaving his character to sit unattended. It was painfully obvious the conversation was over, and Tiona seemed a bit overexcited. She grabbed Joe with powerful hands and basically dragged him out the door. Not that he was resisting. This was getting fun. Chapter 6. Super minor achievement. Joined a party. Nice work. Have some experience. Experience 5. So, here is the deal. Those rabbits are the nastiest thing around until you get about a half-mile out. Then foxes show up to eat the rabbits. Also you, if you aren't strong enough or smell like a rabbit. Later, foxes get eaten by wolves. Bears keep the wolves away, and so on till you start seeing magical monsters. There are also wolfmen walking around out there, but they don't seem to fit into these categories. They aren't too much of an issue if you stay out of their territories, but there are a lot of quests to hunt them, Tiona told Joe. Don't worry about that, though. Today, you have one job and one job only. Don't die. Can you deal with that? I was a medic on active duty in the army for the last few years, Joe proudly informed her. I got this. Piece of cake. Oh, good. How did that go? Enjoy your time in the service? She muttered as she stared down an extra-large rabbit. She loosened her sword and drew it as they got closer. Not so much. My last day was when my chopper got blown out of the sky. Joe coughed, face red with embarrassment. He should have kept his mouth shut. She paused. Yeah, my order stands. Don't die. She used some blade skill, sending a strange energy out as a slash. A moment later, there was a quickly cut-off squeak, followed by squeals of rage, as a small group of bunnies ran at them. The rabbits had a small, blunt horn on their heads, and it seemed their main attack was jumping and bashing their opponents. The largest man in the group smoothly intercepted the blow, and a ping was heard as the animal fell in multiple chunks from the oversized sword. 2 blades and an arrow worked together to quickly erase these minor threats from existence. Angry Horned Rabbit ×5. Defeated. Experience 20. Joe was a bit disheartened. It looked like quests were indeed the best way to gain experience points. 4 points per rabbit. No wonder it took so long to level up. Let's roll, we have a lot of ground to cover. Tiona set a brisk pace, and within a few moments, they had left the blood-stained ground behind. They didn't even collect the furs. At this point, they were so common that they were totally worthless. Joe nearly collapsed as they went too fast for him to regenerate stamina, his poor constitution catching up with him again on one of their frequent rest stops, where they did not actually stop, just slowed to a crawl. Tiona grouched at him to increase his constitution so they could jog further at one time. There are more important things for me to focus on, Joe wheezed while glaring at his slowly refilling stamina bar. Tiona replied in a non-committal manner. Well, you are the only one with a mana bar, so I guess whatever you say goes. Local event, trespassers, survive the swarm to gain rewards. Ambush! One of the others shouted, making Tiona whip around with her sword in hand. The team's main fighter seemed resigned to his fate. Crap, it's a swarm. Good game all. See you tomorrow. It appeared that one of the members had gotten too close to a rabbit warren, and the horned rabbits were scampering out of the ground in an attempt to overwhelm the humans. Stop spouting that defeatist crap and get set. Tiona ordered them to form a defensive ring with their backs to a tree. Joe was stuffed into the protected center as the first rabbits began their attack. Red numbers began appearing above the other party members, and a small list of names with total health appeared in Joe's vision. Only his years in the army kept him from freezing up as cries of agony from both sides began reaching his ears. One of the important features of this game was realistic feedback, specifically pain, which made people play much more carefully. Joe started healing, and since he was so close to the affected individuals, he simply used his spell Lay on Hands, restoring 10 hit points every 3 seconds to whomever was the most damaged person. Luckily for the group, each individual attack from the rabbits only took a little health from the target, and even that was somewhat mitigated by the armor they were wearing. Unfortunately, however, there were so many attacking rabbits that those points were adding up quickly. Working as fast as possible, Joe kept the mana flowing and the health points increasing. I cannot believe how useful you are, one of the men with them chuckled as he skewered a rabbit. I don't know any other teams that survived a swarm this long, even if they had a higher overall level. And if we win, I'm buying you a drink. Keep your mind on the target, Dylan. Tiona snapped at him. You're slowing down. Dylan, the main fighter, rolled his eyes. That's stamina drain, not my fault. Push past it. Use more skill and less strength with each swing. They don't all need a full power attack. Go until you collapse, or we're going to lose our cleric on his first day, Tiona ordered, furiously swinging her blade into the wave of fluffy animals. I'm doing it, geez. Dylan stumbled on his next swing, his low stamina making his attack too slow to kill the rabbit he was aiming at. He overextended and tripped, falling forward and away from the group. Damn it, Dylan, Tiona called as the horde of rabbits focused on him. Joe was watching Dylan's health as it swiftly trickled lower and lower. Ignoring the shouts from the others to stay back, he leapt forward and grabbed Dylan's foot as the man struggled weakly to protect his head from the abusive bunnies. Dylan was down to 5 health before the first wash of healing water flowed over him, and he hung on a few more moments as Joe alternated to the regular healing spell, waiting for the touch version's cooldown to reset. Using a spell as soon as it was ready, Joe worked to heal his fallen teammate through the brutal beating. The others had stepped forward as a unit, and were killing the rabbits that were entirely focused on Dylan. They were able to kill 2 or even 3 at a time. The population was so dense. 30 seconds and 20 healing spells later, Tiona finished off the last of the stragglers and glared at Joe. "I thought you said you were new to the game." She pointed her sword at him accusingly. Joe didn't look away from Dylan. He required too much healing. "I am." Another wash of water swept over the bruised and battered man. "Then how did you know that monsters will almost always focus on helpless targets? You would have died if that weren't the case." Tiona was looking at him oddly. "This has been my job for years. I was a combat medic. Putting myself at risk to save others is just a part of the job," Joe calmly replied as he sent another heal into Dylan. He was up to half health now and was able to sit up to begin regaining stamina. "I don't care what your job used to be. From now on, you follow my orders or you're out. I don't care how useful you are," Tiona barked at him, breaking his concentration. "I don't care if you were a dang nab general. If you cannot do what I tell you when I tell you, I will leave you out here to die. You put all of us at risk by breaking formation. The only reason we survived was because we got lucky." Dylan looked up at Joe and nodded. "She's right. If I had died, it would have been my own cockiness that killed me. But you dying would have killed all the others when that swarm rolled over them. There are different rules here and you don't know them. I do appreciate it though. Waiting for respawn sucks." Joe sat back with a sigh. "I understand. My bad. I'm not used to seeing someone come back if they die, so I kind of freaked out. Everything here is just so real. Well, dying here isn't great. Depending on how much of your death is attributed to stupidity, you can't play for up to 12 hours, which is 24 in-game. If you are in a long-term capsule, you just have to sit and wait. You can access the internet, but it is still boring. VR helmet is a bit better, 'cause they can go do other things," Tiona described to him, though anything else she was going to say cut off as the experience points came rolling in. Angry rabbit times 35, swarm slain, local event trespassers complete. Experience increased due to low average party level. Experience 210. 4 XP times 35 rabbits times 1.5 difficulty. New hidden chain quest, playing your fake roll 1. Heal at least 50% of damage dealt in 5 battles before combat ends. Reward, title, I'm a healer, I swear. Effect, gain bonus experience for every battle that you heal at least 50% of the damage taken before combat ends. 0 of 5, complete. Nice. Joe would work to get that quest done as soon as possible. It was surprising how difficult it was to level up. But Joe supposed that they were fighting rabbits. The party started walking, ignoring the ruined carcasses of rabbits in their hurry to find wolves to fight. Dylan broke the awed silence. "I got 84 experience off of that. I'm getting close to level 6. "Congrats." Tiona sent a lopsided grin at him. "You would have been there last week if you had bothered to show up for training. Hey, not all of us can afford not to work and hang out in pods all day." Dylan laughed aloud, but Tiona's face went white with rage. "Shut it!" she hissed at him. "What if Pakers heard you?" Joe looked between Tiona's angry glare and Dylan's admonished face. "What?" "Peekers. Player killers," Dylan muttered shamefacedly. "My bad, boss. Joe, Peekers hunt people in pods for a couple reasons. Pod people can feel more pain than a standard player in a VR headset, and obviously people playing on the older VR versions can't feel much of anything. When you die to a player, you are out of the game for a minimum of 3 to 6 hours, up to 24 if the game AI judges your death to be from something really stupid that was your fault. People in long-term pods are in the game until their contract is up, so dying is not only annoying, it is a huge waste of time and really expensive in real-world money. So, people kill other players just to be assholes. No other benefit. Joe couldn't believe humans could be so terrible. Worse than that, it is actually actively punished by the game. When you kill another player, and if they could see who you were, you have a bounty placed on you. Masks and other gear could hide your name, but you need to have contact with shady organizations in order to get them. While your name was red, anyone can kill you without repercussions. You have a chance to lose gear if you die, and NPCs will attack you if you try to enter the city. The bounty does wear off over time, especially if you killed plenty of monsters, but there is a good chance that you just don't survive the experience. Yup, you don't drop anything if killed by a player, and they don't get experience for it either. Usually peakers are outdated VR gamers who are pissed that they don't have the funds to experience modern virtual reality themselves, Dylan informed him. So you really want to keep that info on the down low, you dig? Sure. Joe was a bit nonplussed about the terminology. He had been out of high school for over a decade. Why can't people just speak properly? This sort of crap led to miscommunication and misunderstandings. He shook his head. Foxes ahead. Focus, please. An arrow snapped out, hitting a fox in the eye and killing it instantly. Critical hit. The team's ranger chuckled. Something was bothering Joe. He finally realized what it was. So, real-world damage is the same here? Meaning, hit an eye, cut a throat, stab a heart, and they die? Joe clarified for him. Yup, the archer offered verbosely. Joe looked at his character sheet. Also, I didn't get any experience for that fox. Didn't participate, did you? I'm betting that as a healer, you'll need to be in a battle mindset in order to get the experience. You didn't think of yourself as a participant in that, since it was a ranged attack. The AI in control of the game takes that into account. The more you contribute, the better the reward. That's why you probably got decent experience for that swarm, and maybe some from when they get real close to you. The archer nodded sagely at him. I see. Joe didn't offer his experience gains to the group, preferring to remain mysterious. I did just get a quest that will give me experience for healing when I complete it. All I need to do is heal 50% of the damage done to us 5 times before combat ends. Oh, really? That will make leveling you into a useful player a lot faster and easier. We try hard not to get hit, so you won't need to heal much to complete your quest. Thanks? Joe was fairly certain she had insulted him. I'm useful. A little. But until you gain a few levels, you won't really be useful. You can just heal a bit. Joe looked on dejectedly as the foxes were eliminated before he could get in a swing. He swung his scepter when one got close, but it easily dodged. He looked at his status bars. That single attack had drained his stamina by half. He really needed to find some attack magic. His enthusiasm ramped up again as a fox got close enough to bite Tiona on the ankle. Yes, ow. Tiona glared at Joe as her sword sliced into the offending creature. What the heck are you cheering for? I got bit. Sorry about that. But now I can at least heal you. Need that quest progress. Joe poked her on the neck and let icy water wash down her back. She yelped louder than when she had been bit and viciously took out her rage on the next fox. As it died, a message sprung into Joe's vision. Playing your fake role. 1 out of 5 complete. Nice. Just need to heal you all 4 more times. Who wants to take one for the team? Joe looked around expectantly. No one met his gaze except a glaring Tiona. You realize that it actually hurts to get bit, clawed, or bludgeoned, right? Her eyebrow was twitching. Well, yeah, but... No buts. She jabbed a finger into his chest. It's obvious you haven't taken damage yet, or else you wouldn't be excitedly telling someone else to get hurt for you. This is one of those quests we aren't going to rush for you. We get hurt plenty. Just wait until it happens naturally. Joe hung his head. Sorry, guys. I wasn't thinking about that. Not a problem, buddy. Dylan slapped Joe on the back. Just remember that to anyone who is in a capsule, this is real life until their contract is up. Pain hurts, and dying is avoided if at all possible. Think like that, and you are good. Play like it isn't a game. Dylan's words put Joe's situation in perspective perfectly. As a medic, he would have never wanted someone to get hurt so he could practice on them. His whole career was based on prevention of injury and getting people back on their feet as soon as possible. This was his new life. For all he knew, his body had already been incinerated. He needed to treat this as real life, and from now on, he would. Anyway, we are almost to the wolves. They hunt in small packs, so our defenses need to be perfect. They walked around for a few minutes, looking for any signs of movement. The further they moved from the city, the slower they moved. Dylan gave a great heaving sigh and groaned. "Where are the stupid things?" His words seemed to be a trigger, because a wolf pounced at him from a bush and clamped its jaws around Dylan's leg. With a snarl and a sharp jerk, the leg was twisted and dislocated with a loud pop. Dylan howled with pain as the remaining members of his group attacked the creature. Tiona was the only one with experience fighting wolves, so while the others were focused on helping Dylan, she turned and swung blindly behind them. Her sword impacted a leaping canine, which yelped and fell to the ground with a chunk of fur torn off of it. Taking advantage of its helpless state, she stabbed down through its chest to execute the creature. Joe was so surprised that he forgot to heal right away and instead swung his scepter at the wolf, holding Dylan. Bonk. A damage indicator showing a red 0 popped up over the animal, meaning that his most vicious strike directly to the head was utterly useless. "I need healing," Dylan gasped, breathless from pain. The wolf was dead, killed by the other party members, but its jaw was still locked around his leg. Tiona and the others circled around Dylan as two more wolves revealed their presence. Joe dropped to his knees and worked on pulling the teeth out of Dylan's leg. A wash of fresh blood poured from the now open wound, and Joe wrapped his hand around the holes to keep pressure on the leg. With his other hand, he made a quick gesture and water washed over the blood, leaving behind clean, unblemished skin. After twisting his leg into the socket, it took 2 more uses of his healing abilities before Dylan could use his leg again. By the time they stood up, the fight was over. Playing your fake roll 1, 2 out of 5. Complete. Experience 48, wolf times 4, skill gained, medic, novice eye. Don't have access to a healer? Patch wounds together the best you can. This skill increases efficiency of bandages, medicines, and potions by 1% per skill level. No one else even got hurt. Why is it always you? Maybe you should just give in to fate and become a tank. The group's archer elbowed Dylan good-naturedly as Tiona worked to skin the dead animals. You know, intentionally draw in the attacks that are coming to you anyway. I have no idea why it happens. Maybe I just taste good, Dylan rebutted wearily. Screaming in pain was tiring. Also, know who wants to be a tank. Stand on the front line and take all the damage. Can you even imagine how much that will suck when someone is chucking a fireball at you? I don't look forward to burning to death or cooking inside my armor as it melts onto me. Some people choose to be tanks. Some tanks are chosen. I think you are one of the chosen. Just ignore perception and put everything into constitution, the archer demanded cheekily. Let him build his own character. Tiona stood up and pointed at a pile of fur. Let's find a good spot to store these and keep hunting. We can skin them later. Wolf fur is good for armor, so it'll sell nicely back in town. Chapter 7. They were able to hunt down 2 more wolf packs before everyone judged that it was time to head back. According to Dylan, being caught out of town at night was a death sentence no matter what level you were at. They started walking back to the city as Joe looked over his gains from the hunting trip. He had gained another 96 experience from his part in killing wolves, but still hadn't ranked any of his skill above novice level 1. Trying to understand why, Joe asked Tiona what he had to do to rank them up. Well, to boost skills, you need to use them over and over or study how to use them better. There is a common saying that to be a master of the sword, you need to have 10,000 hours of combat. If that holds true here, imagine what it takes to become a grandmaster or a sage. Tiona shook her head in wonder. Also, if you are good at the skill already, it will level a whole lot faster. A 5-star cook in real life apparently has his cooking skill to journeymen already. Supposedly, it is so the game will appeal to a wider variety of people. Not everyone is a combat fanatic like I am. Now, there is another way to increase skills, but it is almost as hard. What is it? Leveling. She laughed at his incredulous look. At every level, you get at least 1 skill point. Some people have said that they got more than 1, but there is no way to know how they did it. You can spend a skill point on any skill to instantly increase it by 1. But I think it is a much better idea to hoard those points until you really need them. Why bother using them on a novice skill? 1 skill point per level. That's absurd. Joe thought about how many skills and spells he already had. It would take him until level 80 to get one of his skills to sage rank. You can sometimes get skill points from quest rewards, from being the first to find an area, or doing special actions. It is really hard to say how hard it will actually be to... Joe was driven to the ground as a wolf the size of a small horse landed on him. A savage bite tore into him as his teammates screamed. They charged at the wolf as it howled in triumph. A very dazed Joe looked at the text floating in front of his eyes as he struggled to move in spite of the pain. Sneak attack by dire wolf. Double damage inflicted. -60 health. Undying robe effect triggered. Health set to 1. Bleeding. -5 health per 10 seconds. Stunned for 5 seconds. 4. 3. This was a good example of being non-realistic. Though he was at only 1 hit point, he was still able to function so long as he could fight through the crippling pain. Joe waited for the stun effect to fade, mouth moving like a fish as he tried to gasp for air. The agony was almost unbearable, but the fact that he couldn't move was what was really terrifying him. He would never go back to being a quadriplegic. As soon as he could move again, the pain intensified further. Joe moved his hands and forced his spell to activate. Lay on hands, health +10. Bleed effect, health -5. Heal, health +5. Lay on hands, health +10. He was able to outpace the bleed effect with his healing, and 12 seconds later, he was back to full health. There was a small benefit to having almost no constitution. He could get back on his feet much faster than a normal beefy character. He surveyed the battle, noting that almost all of his teammates were heavily injured. If the sneak attack had done double damage to him, that meant that a normal attack could do 30 damage. With a normal constitution, this meant that each person could take 3 attacks before dying. He hurried to join combat, but decided to keep his distance. Joe started hurling balls of healing water, boosting his target's health by 5 points every few seconds. Tiona moved like a terrifying force of nature, twisting around attacks, bending at odd angles, and stabbing into exposed weak points with perfect timing. Her movements were graceful, but no matter how hard she tried, she was still taking damage every few seconds. Though she was usually able to avoid the main attack, she was still nicked by claws or teeth. This enemy was simply that strong and agile. Joe fired off his healing spells as fast as possible, and would have continued doing so if the creature's rage-filled gaze hadn't snapped to him. With a snarl, it charged past the other members and made a beeline for the healer. Just before the ball of fur, teeth, and fury reached him, Dylan barreled into the animal's side and knocked it over. The wolf was back on its feet in a flash, but now its focus was riveted on Dylan. "Damn it, I'm a tank," Dylan griped as he stabbed the wolf. Joe used the distraction to run around the fight and heal Tiona. After 2 uses of healing spells, Tiona rushed back into the battle. With the team getting healed each time the spell was off cooldown, the fight quickly grew to a close. A well-timed arrow thunked into the heart of the great animal, and it finally fell with a mournful howl. Zone alert. Members of the guild, the Wanderers, have killed a local animal field boss. For the next 24 hours, all wolves having lost their protector will take 20 bonus damage. The Wanderers Guild gains plus 20 fame with the city of Ardenia. The area alert faded, leaving only the reward for the battle in Joe's view. For being the first to vanquish the field boss, Silver Dire Wolf, you gain plus 1 skill point and plus 50 personal and guild fame with Ardenia. Return the pelt of the fallen animal to the town guard for a monetary award. Experience 150 for fighting through pain and saving yourself from otherwise certain death through sheer willpower. Wisdom plus 1. Joe made a choking sound as he was engulfed in light. Euphoria flooded through him, and he levitated an inch off the ground. There was a soundless explosion, and Joe dropped to the ground completely refreshed. Even his clothes were clean. He looked around to see 2 other members of the party dropping to the ground as well. Goofy smiles playing across their faces. I love leveling up. Dylan gave a shudder of happiness and looked at the massive wolf. We need to hurry. It's already getting dark. I'm on it. Tiona started skinning the wolf, trying to keep the fur as intact as possible. Someone collect the meat as I go. It'll make it easier to flip over, and I bet dire wolf meat will sell for a good price. I'd eat it. Same. Sounds exotic, the archer responded greedily. You realize you are talking about eating dog, right? Dylan sent a queer look at the pile of meat that was swiftly growing. Joe sat on the ground and exhaled softly. That had been way too close. His mind was frazzled, and his thoughts were fuzzy. He wanted to sleep. Joe reached out and plucked a flower growing next to him, twirling it in his hand and smelling it. New skill gained, herbalism. Novice eye, plant. What plant? All you see is ingredients. Whether they are for dinner or for creating potions is up to you. Usable raw plants are 1% easier to find, 1% easier to process, and have 1% greater effect per skill level. Joe continued looking at the plant in his hand, and it did indeed seem a tiny bit more distinctive. Without the notice, he would have chalked it up to not looking at it properly beforehand. He stared at the flower, trying to figure out what it was. The pop-up bar over the plant only showed question marks, as his knowledge check failed. so Joe simply shrugged and put the plant into his pocket. He really needed to get a bag. "Ready to go, cleric?" Looking up, Joe noticed that the archer was holding a hand out to him. "Sure thing, Archer. What's your name, by the way?" "Ex-Knight Master X." "I'm not calling you that." "Then call me Chad." The archer grinned at him. "That's almost as bad." Joe chuckled at the grinning ranger as they walked through the slowly darkening forest. Joe was the only person not carrying either a load of meat or pelts. He had tried to, but the stamina drain was so severe that he had only been able to take a few steps at a time with a single pelt before needing to recover or risk collapsing. Teona had loaded his burden onto Dylan, stating that if he were more weighed down, he would do fewer stupid things, now moving at as frantic of a pace as Joe could maintain. The group swiftly retraced their steps to the town. Joe was having an easier time of it since not only was he unburdened, his class ability of dark vision made sure that he never stumbled on the roots and stones hidden by the encroaching darkness. Most of the animals they would have normally had to face were hiding, burrowed away from the dangers of night. The group entered town with grins on their faces, relieved to have made it before the gates were locked. That would have been an almost assured death sentence. They turned in their quest, gaining 3 gold and 90 silver coins for the pelt of the dire wolf. Joe was disappointed at first, but the ecstatic faces of his group mates assured him that the reward was a good one, as they talked about how they were going to spend their shares. He didn't have the heart to tell them that he could likely buy a small town with his bank account. They made their way back to their tavern just as the gates boomed, signaling that they had been barred for the night. No one was outside to see a few rotting rabbits begin to twitch. Chapter 8. "Wake up!" Joe howled as a cup of cold water was tossed on him, causing him to launch himself from the bed. His stamina instantly drained from that maneuver, and he ignobly collapsed into a pile on the floor. "Why?" he sputtered at the grinning Teona as he tried to use the bed to pull himself to his feet. "How did you even get in here? I rented this room." "So? How would that stop anyone from getting in? You didn't even bother to lock the door." She wagged a finger at him admonishingly. "You were supposed to stop thinking of this as a game, remember? As for why, well, you are just going to have to see it to believe it. Hurry up. It's a beautiful morning." They went downstairs, where a beaming guild master was turning his brightest smile on Joe. "What's up with him?" Joe was feeling distinctly uncomfortable from the creepy look. That smile was intense enough to classify as a light-based weapon. "You remember how we killed the dire wolf last night and we got reputation for the guild? That's what the smile is for. We need to be at least friend-level reputation to get an official guild hall in the city. Getting a leg up on the competition is great, because there can only be 4 official guild halls in the city. The first 4 to do so will get the title Noble Guild and have access to elite quests for the kingdom." Teona shrugged as if this was inconsequential and pointed at a bowl of food. She waited until he started to chow down before continuing to speak. "Eat fast. We need you right away. Oh, and did you look over your stats after leveling? You should have gotten a little stronger and gotten at least 1 skill point. I wouldn't recommend using it until you know how you want to build yourself, but feel free to ruin your character. The best way to see any changes is to say Delta status. That will let you see only the changes on your sheet instead of a wall of text you can't see through." Joe nodded at her and quickly intoned the words, Delta status. As he looked at the tiny window, he found that he was rather cheerful not to have to slog through an exhausting list. Intelligence, 16 to 17. Wisdom, 16 to 18. Level +1. for feat of willpower. Perception, 18 to 19. Unused skill points, 1 to 6. Level +1 for boss kill bonus. As expected, intelligence, wisdom, and perception increased by 1 while the others didn't budge. But when he glanced at his skill points, he nearly choked on his admittedly dry bread. He had 6 points, 6 of them. He got 1 point from the wolf boss, so did that mean he gained 4 points from leveling? Joe tore through his menus until he arrived at his class description, and his eyes lit up when he read the words. They gain skill in their chosen pursuits at 4 times the speed of an average human due to their vast thirst for power. Shun. He wanted to shout for joy, but he knew that if he disclosed this information in public, he would likely be killed by other players out of jealousy. Doing his best to calm himself, he reached his hand toward his skill sheet. He shivered, feeling entirely too frustrated. Joe was itching to spend a couple points on his spells, and only Tiona's rather timely warnings about waiting kept him from becoming a miracle healer overnight. After finishing his breakfast, he was led to the gates by a grinning Tiona. The other party members looked a bit leery, but followed quietly. Stopping just before leaving town, she pointed at the field of rabbits. "Take a look. Let me know what you see." Joe glanced at the beautiful landscape, and his perception-enhanced eyes instantly locked onto a hopping oddity. What was wrong with that rabbit? Just as he realized the truth, a screen appeared in his vision. New zone quest, waste not. The innumerable bodies left lying in the open have allowed a dark corruption to take hold of the rabbit population. They aren't that smart, but they are hopping mad and hungry. Kill all zombie rabbits around Ardinia before the normal rabbit population is converted to the undead. Time remaining, 36 hours, 23 minutes. Reward, reputation based on contribution. Failure. The area will slowly convert to deadlands. Animals will starve and become much more vicious. Whoa. This game is freaking amazing. Joe couldn't stop a smile from crawling across his face. This is because people kept leaving the rabbits out in the open after killing them, right? I don't see it. What are you talking about? Dylan was looking around the open field with evident confusion, whereas the others quickly saw the issue. Bad perception. Joe grinned at the muscle-bound warrior. Looks like the rabbits that people left out in the open went full zombie mode. There is a zone quest to clear them out before we lose the rabbit population entirely. Dylan flinched as a screen appeared in front of him. Okay, I see it now. Thanks for pointing it out. Chad would have made me suffer for a while first. Not my fault that you were building as a tank even before you knew you were going to be one. Chad stared at Dylan, trying to make his eyes hypnotic. Do it. Do it. I'm not going to be a tank. Dylan shoved the ranger away. Where is everyone? Isn't this kind of important for the town? Joe was surprised to see Tiona roll her eyes. It is, but most people don't care. It is technically a social quest. No guaranteed loot, so unless they're trying to get high reputation, they just won't bother. She gestured at a group of people walking past all the zombies, like they didn't have a care in the world. The zombies are not hostile toward us right now, being too focused on killing healthy rabbits. The pelt and meat are rotten, and were worthless even when they weren't disgusting. They apparently do give a little bit more experience. That means nothing to me, though. Chad groaned abruptly. I got a total of 0 experience from them yesterday. That's why we are going to the edge of Fox territory to grind today. Tiona grinned wickedly at Joe, creating a sinking feeling in his stomach. We're going to hunt foxes while Joe hunts zombits. We meet up to get healed, or if one of us needs help. Zombits. Oh, zombie rabbits. Cute. Joe shrugged his thin shoulders. Works for me. I could use the practice. They started walking, exterminating all zombies in their path to gain some progression in the quest. It took a bit longer than expected because the corpse didn't count as dead until either fully dismembered or the heads were crushed. When they got to the edge of the territory, the others gave a jaunty wave and left Joe to kill the rotten balls of fluff and pus. They intended to stay within shouting range, but Joe still felt a bit nervous to be alone. Luckily, the dead animals weren't hostile until attacked, so he could take his time lining up his attacks. He got behind a roaming zombie, grasped his scepter with both hands, and brought the weapon down as hard as he could. A sad little -1 floated away from the rabbit. The zombie shuffled to a stop, twitched as though it had been bitten by a mosquito, and then turned around after deciding it had indeed been attacked. Joe glanced at his stamina bar, noting that it had dropped by 1/3. So the careful stance and purposeful swing had cost less than his wild attack on the wolf last night. Good to know. He swung again, his scepter cracking against the rotting legs of the rabbit. -1, crippled. Movement speed -30%. Good. That should slow the animal down and allow him to regenerate some stamina. Joe was gasping a little. The force he needed if he wanted to inflict any damage was difficult to muster. The zombie suddenly lunged at him, tearing into his leg with its large, flat teeth. Joe released a high-pitched shriek as the fatty stores in his leg were exposed to the open air. -7 health. Bleeding minor, -1 health per 5 seconds. Minor infection possible if wound is not treated within 30 minutes. How the heck was that fair? He was swinging a weapon. It was using rotten teeth. Off balance, Joe swung his weapon again, hitting the animal and fully draining his stamina. He dropped to the ground as a wave of exhaustion hit him, and he waited for the next attack to tear into his body. After a moment, he opened his eyes and looked for the zombie he had been fighting. The creature was not in sight, but a small pile of ash informed him of its fate. Joe was confused enough that he had to look over the combat logs. Glancing blow. Zombie rabbit takes 0 damage. Scepter activates ability. Turn undead. As zombie rabbit is at half health or below, it is disintegrated. Experience 4. Well, that explains it. Joe looked at his weapon with a new appreciation, and was also pleased to know new facts about the zombies. They had to have between 3 to 4 health, and they bit really hard. Not only did he need to watch out for their normal attacks, but there was no way he could dodge. He had to be extra careful to stay on top of his wounds, because while he didn't know what disease damage would do to him, it was likely unpleasant. With a quick motion, he healed his leg and sat down to recover his stamina. He didn't want to be lazy, but he needed to be able to swing his weapon with full force at least 3 times. Also, weren't the zombie versions of these animals supposed to be worth extra experience? Automated system response. As a cleric not devoted to evil or necromancy, a part of your duties is to destroy undead. No extra experience will be gained for their destruction. Well, that was just unpleasant. He had been hoping for quick levels off of this. Joe quickly began hunting in earnest, trying to refine his skull-bashing technique as he went along. Get behind zombie, swing scepter into creature's leg and hopefully cripple it. Step back, let stamina refill a little. Attack twice. Hit head as hard as possible. If the zombie died, great. If not, step back and wait a moment. Finish off zombie, collapse from exhaustion. It took a few tries, but he started becoming more efficient at dismantling the undead bunnies. He got a notification 3 hours into killing zombies. just as he killed his 32nd animal. For landing 100 attacks without missing, dexterity +1. For having refilled your stamina from under a third 30 times in 3 hours, constitution +1. Skill gained, staff mastery, novice, 1. You have taken a step on the path of hitting your opponents with blunt objects and hoping against hope they stay away from you. You are doing great. Yes, he was well on his way to being as healthy as an average child, maybe a sickly child. A scepter was considered a staff. All right, he could deal with that. Joe planned to keep going, but his rumbling stomach informed him that he was starting to become hungry. He turned back, slowly making his way toward the meeting point for the team. As he arrived, he froze as he noticed something amiss. It took a moment to understand why his senses were screaming danger. But then someone stepped out from behind a tree, and the smell of blood wafted over his enhanced senses. "Hello there. You must be the cleric who has caused so much trouble for us." The man was grinning, but certainly didn't appear overly happy. "The Wanderers Guild is ahead of us in reputation gains now. How do you propose to fix that for me?" Joe was startled by the sudden development, but tried to keep his wits about himself. "I have no idea what you mean. I'm sorry to say I can't help you. I'm just here to meet up with my team." "Oh?" A few more people stepped out of cover as the man spoke. "Tiona's team, right? Well, they'll be back online tomorrow. How about you party with us for a while instead? You know, make up for wasting our time." Obviously, these people had killed Joe's team while he was away heroically slaying rabbits. From the look of the blood dripping from the others, saying no wouldn't be appreciated. "And who are you?" Joe asked as boldly as possible, trying to inject himself with confidence. "I go by Headshot. I'm the leader of a little guild. You may have heard of it. The Hardcores?" His grin widened as he saw Joe make the connection. The Hardcores were the guild of people dedicated to peaking people in long-term pods. Knowing that Joe knew about him, Headshot was baffled by the next words he heard. "No chance. May as well send me to respawn." Joe glared at the people who had killed his team before turning and trying to walk away. Hey, no need to be so hostile." Headshot made a motion, and the others surrounded Joe, cutting off his escape. "How about you just come with us for a walk, and you can make your decision when we are done chatting." A blade poked into Joe's back, knocking off 5 health points and making him wince. Headshot turned around and started strolling along. Joe was forced to follow. "There are so many benefits to working for me. You level faster because the competition won't take your kills. You get to go into high-density spawning areas that we control. And best of all, my guild won't kill you every time we see you." Joe stayed silent as the man waxed eloquent about all the control tactics he used against other people, but was fully disgusted by what he heard. The way this man was speaking, everyone in the guild was a slave, while everyone else was an obstacle to be cut down. They passed through the edge of the wolves' territory, and a thundering sound began to grow in volume. Wondering what that is? Headshot was no longer smiling or pretending to be nice. He seemed to have decided that Joe wasn't going to accept his offer. Now, his only interest was making the defiant clerk hurt as much as possible before dying. "That's a waterfall. It flows off what can only be called a hole in the world into a really small lake. Well, maybe it just looks small. It is a long way down, after all. You don't care about that, though. What you care about is all the rock that surrounds the tiny lake." Joe was forced to the edge of the hole when they got to it, and had to admit that Headshot hadn't been exaggerating. This felt like the edge of the world. As far as he could tell, the ground just dropped a few thousand feet. What was strange was that he could see sunlight at the bottom. Was it another stage of the game? Another continent they hadn't unlocked? If so, either the land they were on was elevated, or the one he was looking at had sunk. Headshot grabbed Joe by his neck and pushed him forward. "Time to choose. Join me and get all sorts of benefits, or take flying lessons and we'll try this again another time." "Guess I'm going for respawn because there's no chance I'm joining you. Also, your recruitment pitch sucks." Joe made a rude gesture at Headshot, whose face contorted in anger. "You overgrown man-child. You want to play it this way? Fine. Jump." Headshot folded his arms and glared. "That way you will get the maximum respawn time. Intentionally jumping off a cliff? What will the AI think of you?" "I'm not jumping." Joe glared back just as hard, extending the rude gesture to the other players as he waited for the situation to come to a head. "Either sign the contract to join our guild, or we are going to start taking chunks off of you. Or you can just jump. If you make us start slashing you, we'll be sure not to let you die. I don't need my name to go red again, or it'd be past dark by the time I could re-enter town. You are a total ass. Screw your guild. I will get back at you for this," Joe promised vehemently, having made his decision. "Start stabbing him, boys. He's getting too chatty." As pointy objects began closing in on him, Joe took a deep breath, turned, and jumped. Chapter 9. Wind rushed around Joe as he approached terminal velocity. The rock was looming ever closer as Joe tried to think of a way out of this situation. But all he came up with was, "This is going to hurt." He was almost positive that he would survive because the effects of his undying robe would kick in. Sadly, he wasn't sure if he would stay alive very long, since he was certain that he would be a messy stain on the ground. Joe targeted himself and cast Heal, and a globe of water appeared in his hand. His falling speed created a whipping wind that pulled the healing water off of him as it tried to collect in his hand. But he noticed that despite not being able to control the spell, the water was following his path through the air. The range was only supposed to be 10 feet for the spell. Would falling negate that? Increase the range, perhaps? It was a desperate hope, but he made as many orbs as he could, starting to hyperventilate as the last few feet passed in a blur. Splat! Joe had belly-flopped onto the ground and should have died instantly. There was now a wall of text in front of his eyes, but he was unable to focus on the information the game was providing him. Joe could only focus on what his body was telling him. His eyes had popped. His insides were outsides. His bones were shattered to splinters. Splash! The 5 spheres of healing water landed in succession on him, and his damaged body was forced into a cohesive shape. He would have screamed if he weren't in shock when his spinal column reconnected itself. In an instant, he was at 25 health. He grabbed himself and used lay on hands and heal until he was at full health, then flopped back and took deep, shuddering breaths. The pain had passed so fast that it was barely horrifyingly traumatic. He really hoped that he wouldn't have any dreams about this experience, though he knew it was inevitable. Joe opened his repaired eyes and looked over the notifications he had received. Heal used. Heal delayed due to travel speed times 5. True damage from impact with terrain received, minus 4,500 health. Jump skill not high enough to mitigate fall damage. Undying Robe's passive effect activated. Health set to 1. Crippled. Bleeding. Sensors damaged. Bones broken times 206. Organs ruptured. Minus 50 health per second until healed. 5 health gained times 5. Lay on hands activated times 2. Heal activated ×2, organs repaired, bleed effect removed, full health restored. Joe looked at the messages and chuckled, preparing to find the energy and willpower to stand. More text began to appear, interrupting his rise. Achievement earned. Jump, jump, jump around. You have jumped so many times that you have spent over 30 seconds in the air. You have collectively jumped 850 times your height and lived to tell the tale. Jump skill has increased to... Error. Jump skill not found. You have earned the skill. Jump, novice. Error. While others take the boring route, you hop, skip, and especially jump along. Jump a total of 25 times your height to rank up. You have so far jumped 850 out of 0 times your height. Error. Experience earned. Error. Divide by 0. Debug. Experience 800. Joe was starting to get concerned. That was a lot of error messages. Was this all because he had not been pushed, but had jumped and survived? Achievement earned. Jump, jump, jump around. You have jumped so many times that you have spent over 30 seconds in the air. You have collectively jumped 850 times your height and lived to tell the tale. Jump skill has increased to... Error. Jump skill not found. You have earned the skill jump. Novice. Error. While others take the boring route, you hop, skip, and especially jump along. Jump a total of 25 times your height to rank up. You have so far jumped 850 out of 0 times your height. Error. Experience earned. Error. Divide by 0. Debug. Experience 800. Joe was starting to get concerned. That was a lot of error messages. Was this all because he had not been pushed, but had jumped and survived? Achievement earned. Jump, jump, jump around. You have jumped so many times that you have spent over 30 seconds in the air. You have collectively jumped 850 times your height and lived to tell the tale. Jump skill has increased to... Error. Jump skill not found. You have earned the skill Jump Novice. Error. While others take the boring route, you hop, skip, and especially jump along. Jump a total of 25 times your height to rank up. You have so far jumped 850 out of 0 times your height. Error. Experience earned. Error. Divide by 0. Debug. Experience 800. Joe blinked. He looked around and realized this must be the respawn room. He hadn't felt any pain, but that attack had been more damaging than falling a few thousand feet and landing face first on stone. He shook his head. How was anyone supposed to fight that? Joe sat down on an overstuffed chair and looked around for anything to do while he waited. He almost smacked himself when he realized that he hadn't called his mother since joining the game. He quickly established a video call with her and broke into a smile when she teared up, seeing that Joe was walking and waving his arms. Her enthusiasm dropped a tiny bit when he explained that he was in a virtual reality, but he made sure to leave out the being legally dead part. They talked for over an hour before she had to go. But that conversation had been soothing to him, healing his soul on a level that only speaking to a loved one can achieve. Joe spent some time looking for data on the game, but it seemed there was still an information blackout. Drat. He had been hoping for some tips on advancing his skills. He tinkered around with the internet for a while until a beeping noise caught his attention. There was a countdown timer above a swirling darkness that was resolving into a portal. The portal stabilized as the timer ended, and Joe stepped through the opening directly to the town square of Ardenia. The sun was already down, unsurprising as he had missed out on 6 hours of gameplay. Joe found the nearest guard and told him about Headshot making him fall off the cliff to his death. The guard while polite and sympathetic, simply waved at Joe and shrugged. "What am I supposed to do here? You fell to your death, but here you stand." So, not knowing what else to do, Joe went into his guild's tavern and temporary residence. A wall of noise almost threw his emaciated body back into the street as the door swung open. Someone noticed him and pointed him out. He was dragged to the front of the room and plopped in front of the guild leader. "Joe, cleric, right?" "Yes. What's going on?" Joe looked around as the noise subsided, the gathered people seeming to anticipate something. "We declared war on the hardcores," the man shouted, a roar of approval meeting his words. "They went around the city and wiped out 6 parties of our people. Then they started hunting field bosses and jumped in city reputation. They were ahead of our ranking all day. But about an hour ago, there was an announcement." What was it? I just respawned. Joe was looking around at all the once again expectant faces, but at his words, their faces sagged. "Dang, I thought it would be you." The guild leader ran a hand through his hair and grinned goofily. "Our guild just got 1,000 reputation points with the city for having the first person to get an expert-ranked skill. We're trying to figure out who it was, because if they leave the guild, they take the reputation with them. Now we are the #1 ranked guild in the city, and only a week or so from gaining friend status. We'd have had it sooner, but those hardcores keep stealing kills, then wiping us out. So, war." "War?" The guild members echoed the man. "Where do I come in? They killed my whole team. I'm ready to get back at them." Joe's voice was cold. A roar of approval made him smile, but the slaps on the back were literally killing him. He needed to subtly heal himself to stay standing. "That's the spirit." Joe was clapped on the back once again. "We need to heal up. They have more people, but if we can keep going after them, we will outpace them before they can understand what hit them. Works for me. Who needs healing?" Joe started going around the room, and soon everyone who had been injured in the last week was at maximum health. After that, well, they were all in a tavern. Drinks were supplied by the guild and everyone got roaring drunk. The next day, the hunt would begin. Joe woke up clutching his head and groaning. He tried healing himself, but the healing water flowing over him did nothing for his dehydration. Inspired by a sudden thought and memories of this exact situation in the army, he punctured a vein on his arm and directed his healing ability into his body like an IV. He was rewarded by a quickly decreasing migraine and a message from the system. Hangover debuff removed. New skill gained. Cleanse. While others need to fight off the effects of poison, disease, or other detrimental effects, your patients will be able to ignore them entirely. Cost 15N mana, where N equals skill level. Effect: remove detrimental effects over time. There will be a mana cost per second until the patient is cured. Recovery speed increases by 1% per skill level. Awesome. Joe decided that he would use Cleanse a few times this morning to display and level the skill, but would charge for it in the future. He started with the guild leader, who was squinting and grunting at an upset Teona. As relief literally washed through him, the leader looked at Joe gratefully and was able to join in the conversation fully. Joe nodded and moved on to other severe patients. Soon the tavern was lively once more, and groups began moving out to hunt the hardcores. "Joe, I'd like you to stay in town and all day today, if at all possible." The guild leader was ignoring Teona as he said this, much to her displeasure. "If someone tries to attack you in town, the guard will blacklist them and kill them for a week whenever they show up again. This way, we can bring our injured to you, and you stay safe." Joe looked at Teona. but had to agree that the logic was good. "Sure thing. I was actually hoping to find a library and read for a while. Yesterday was a little intense." A memory of pain flitted across his face as he remembered splattering his body across the bottom of a cliff. Teona misinterpreted his expression. "Joe, I did the best I could. Don't quit my team just because you died once. All of us have. The first death is the hardest. You get used to it." "Whoa, slow down. I'm not quitting your team. I'm just taking a day off." Joe's answer didn't seem to satisfy the fighter. "Listen, Teona, I got shoved off a cliff yesterday. I didn't die right away when I hit the ground, so I got to experience the lovely feeling of a first-person look at my intestines. I'm taking a single day to myself to get over that and heal other people." Teona looked him over carefully, as if she could ascertain the veracity of his words with a staring contest. "Fine. You're coming along tomorrow, though, even if I have to drag you." She blew out of the door, nearly taking it off the hinges. Joe was escorted to the city library and was politely asked to remain in the area so that he would be available for the guild's needs. Joe nodded and walked into the library, taking a deep breath of the slightly musty air. He had always loved books. When he was a teenager, he had volunteered at a library after school and on weekends, just so that he could always be the first to check out the new books that came in. After he had been blown out of the sky, he hadn't been able to turn the pages. Entertainment had become all television, all the time. "Good morning, traveler. What can we help you with today?" An older gentleman waved at him from behind a laden desk. "Oh, good morning. I am here to read and explore the history of the world, if possible. How did you know that I was a traveler?" Joe was curious. It was almost impossible to tell a player from an NPC unless it was specifically stated or they offered you a quest. "We don't often see new faces here." The librarian arched a brow at him over half-moon spectacles. "I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but access to the library is restricted. Not to be rude, but travelers tend to be rather destructive." Joe's shoulders slumped a bit. He had really hoped to make some progress finding hidden knowledge. What would I need to do in order to gain admittance? He could always sneak in, but would rather not be sent to jail or attacked on sight. You will need a recommendation from a city official. Anyone employed by the city in a high enough position of power will do. The librarian nodded as he thought aloud. If you manage that, I will grant you access to a few sections. More will be available if you'll do some work for us here. There was no quest alert, so Joe knew that this was a personal, social quest. It was likely that he would get a reward beyond access to the books, but it wouldn't be explicitly stated, unlike the Zombit killing quest. He thought a moment and asked, "Would the city guard captain be a worthy reference? I feel that he would be willing to do so." "Yin." "The captain?" The librarian seemed startled as he looked up from the paper he had gone back to reading. Apparently, no one else had continued to ask questions or put effort into entering the library. Yes, he would be just fine. In fact, I have a communication crystal that connects to his office. Are you sure you would like to ask him? If he says no, I will assume you are lying to me. It won't go well for you. Please give him a call then." Joe flashed a brilliant smile at the man, trying to project an innocent vibe. "All right then." The librarian shrugged and touched a crystal on his desk. When the captain answered a moment later, the librarian explained the situation. A glowing reference came pouring out of the communication crystal to the point that when the librarian cut off the call, he stared at Joe incredulously. "How in the world did you get him to like you? He doesn't like anyone. He doesn't like me. I apologize, but I instantly thought you were lying to me. The only reason I actually called him was so that he could arrest you for attempting to use his name for access." That seems a little excessive, Joe muttered softly. Not softly enough. Excessive. Ha! The first traveler to come into the library set a first edition dungeon guide on fire. I've had these rules in place ever since. And guess how many books have started on fire after that? 0. He suddenly turned suspicious. You can't create fire, can you? I'm a cleric. I can create water. No fire yet. Joe thought it best to humor this angry individual. Could I ask your name? I am Boris, the head librarian. You had better not get my books wet. Water can be as damaging as fire, if on a smaller scale. Boris threatened while squinting at Joe. After that recommendation from such an esteemed member of my fair city, you will have access to the entirety of the first floor, even if my heart tells me to keep you away from my precious literature. Many thanks, Sir Boris. Joe inclined his head a bit. I hope that my time here will help me along my path to becoming a scholar when I have gained enough knowledge. He started to walk in the book stacks, but Boris stopped him once again. A scholar? You want to become a scholar? Not a great and powerful warrior, a vanquisher of beasts? You want to study dusty tombs and the written word? Boris's eyes seemed to gleam. Of sorts, yes. I want to do all of that, the beasts included. Joe returned a half-smile to the frail-looking man. I want to learn more than is stored in safe and secure locations, such as this lovely library. I want to seek out lost histories, find eons-old formulae painted on cave walls, and seek out powerful magic hidden by ancient mages. Alas, my strength is lacking for adventure as of yet, and so my journey begins here. Boris was now smiling at him. I think I can see why the captain is so enamored with you. Well, if it is physical strength you need, you are on your own. But there are a few things you could do for me that could hurry along your search for knowledge. Also, as the head librarian, I am the man who will set you on the path of the scholar when you are strong enough. If you'd like, I can allow you to do some of the tasks beginners must complete and simply hold your reward until you are ready. Would this be acceptable? Quest alert. Footsteps through history, one head librarian. Boris is offering tasks to you which all scholars need to complete. Your rewards will be held until you are ready for them. But this could be a great way to get ahead of the competition. Accept? Reject? Joe chose accept and reached out for a handshake. I would love to work with you. Thank you for this opportunity. Boris's smile seemed to become sinister as he assigned Joe his first task. 3 hours later, Joe was cursing his name as he attempted to sort another shelf. Sort the books on the first floor? Is this a sick joke? No title, no author. How the heck am I supposed to do this? By color? So far, he had found that the only method that would work was to read at least the first few chapters and try to understand what the book was all about. Then he would place similar books in piles and hope that he could find enough of them to fill a shelf. There has to be a better way of doing this. Maybe it is a skill given by the scholar job. They can see where the books should be. Is this some kind of torture? Joe did find a small benefit in the work, as a notification popped up. Skill gained, reading. While others run around and get injured, you only strain your eyes. Plus 2% reading speed per skill level. Joe felt that that prompt had been a bit snarky, but the skill itself was excellent, giving a better percentage than any other skill he had gained. Was it because this wasn't a combat skill? He needed to find more information on leveling skills. Joe groaned as he looked over the vast collection of books. The first floor had all the common books of the kingdom, books that were available to anyone if they could find them. The higher floors had uncommon, rare, unique, and even a few legendary books somewhere. Earning access was the only way to get at them, as they were highly valued and thus highly protected. I need to find a faster way. Maybe I could pray about it? Deciding that he may as well try, since he was only doing this all day, Joe activated Pray and prayed aloud for guidance in his tasks. Nothing seemed to happen, so he sighed and continued sorting. Maybe he needed to be more specific? He turned his head to look at all the books he needed to sort through, and his eyes jumped to a specific book on a specific shelf. A fairly large chunk of mana vanished as one of his new skills was used. Divine Intervention. Successful Perception check. Perception plus Jump Around modifier. Joe climbed a short ladder, trying to keep his eyes on the book. When his hands grasped it, he realized that he had needed to push other books out of the way to get to this one. It was on a shelf he hadn't intended to get to today, hidden in a place he couldn't see from the ground. Was this all because he could add his jump score to skills? Or was it only because he had prayed? Joe decided that he needed to test his skills much more thoroughly. He turned the book over, looking at it carefully and trying to determine why it would be useful. He needed to hold the book carefully, as it was old and in poor shape. Walking over and sitting at a table, he gently opened the book and read through the first pages. Right away, he found something interesting. Unlike most of the other books he had read, this one had a title. Seriously? Novice Ritual Magic for the Vastly Uninformed? So, Ritual Magic for Dummies? Joe felt all of his hope deflate. At least it seems to be for my class. Let's see, Chapter 1. Rituals are spells that can affect a large area or a small individual target. While rituals have existed since time untold and can be used by anyone, they are a foolish waste of time and money, and the brunt of jokes for their inefficient and expensive requirements. What a wonderful class I have gained. At least my ritual magic skill might finally become useful. Looking through the various information on rituals available in the book, he nearly choked at the required components. Gold thread, diamond dust, sacrifices of unbound level 20 beasts on an altar during a full moon. No wonder ritual magic was laughed at. Some of these things were simply impossible to acquire, unless you were incredibly rich or powerful. This was a novice set of rituals, or was it just a book to lead idiots astray? How did his ritualist effect come into play here? Did he need to use less components, or could he get away with using material that cost half as much? Could he use silver wire instead of gold, for instance? He needed to try one. He needed to know what to expect. Shaking himself out of his shock, he remembered how he had found this book. He had prayed for it, and his deity wouldn't lead him astray, right? He had been looking for a way to organize the shelves. Perhaps that was included in this book somewhere. Joe paged through the grimoire, taking note of the myriad of spells it contained. Quite an impressive collection for this early in the game. Realistically, though, the amount of rituals contained in this book simply didn't matter. Unless he had a city's worth of resources to play with, it would be a long time until he could use most of these. About halfway through the tome, he found what he was looking for. Little Sister's Cleaning Service. Odd name. Does it summon spectral maids to clean? Joe read over the requirements, trying to determine if it was feasible to attempt this ritual. 1 low-grade monster core to empower the ritual. Why is core capitalized? 1 foot of silver wire per 2 meters of effect. 1 zombie brain to perform the monotonous task. And an initial requirement of 800 mana? Joe gagged a bit at the requirements. Sure, he had the money now, but he had grown up in the lower middle class, He wanted to save his money for when he needed it badly. He cut off that train of thought and looked back at the ritual. It seems to be a permanent spell. At least there is no ending time shown in the formula, so I need to cut the needed shape, the ritual diagram, into something to act as a focus. I should probably bring something with me so I don't damage the library's property. Pretty sure Boris would either kill me or have me arrested. Joe looked at the required material, then glanced around at the thousands of books waiting to be sorted. Pay to win was a valid strategy, right? Guess I'm running to the bank. Chapter 10. Stepping out of the library, Joe winced as the bright sun washed over his highly perceptive eyes. Yet another reason not to stay indoors and read tiny writing with poor lighting. No one from the guild had shown up for healing yet, so he felt secure in running to the market for a short while. Before that, he needed to retrieve some funds from his account. Taking the time to ask for directions to the building, Joe made his way to the capital's bank. There was a small crowd, but luckily the lines were fairly short. After waiting behind a man that smelled like he owned a half-dozen cats, Joe got to the desk and asked the teller to access his account. His damaged cloak and beginner's clothes were looked at by the apparently judgmental teller with a wry grin of disdain. Upon pulling up Joe's information, the man paled, coughed, and began assisting him very professionally. Joe looked at his account and was a little surprised. He had a full 100 gold, more than expected. When he asked about it, the teller informed him it was due to his funds accruing interest. His account and the gold had been created before he started playing the game, so the big old pile of money had been sitting here growing larger by the day. Joe happily withdrew banknotes totaling 50 gold. They worked like checks in that unless he signed them, they had no monetary worth. Even if he was robbed, the game ensured that his money was secure. Of course, the notes wouldn't work outside the city if they ever found a town without a bank. So he also took out a few silver and copper as physical coins. Leaving the bank in a superb mood, Joe strolled toward the market. The silver wire was simple to purchase from a smith, though he seemed to think that Joe was a jewelry maker of some kind, and tried to overcharge him by a huge amount. Having lived thriftily all his life, Joe talked the price down to a reasonable market value. When the smith came back a short time later, Joe found that he had another problem. He had no bag to hold items in. His coins were in a small pouch he had started with, but he needed to buy a backpack. The smith grunted and directed Joe to a general goods shop where he could find a storage container, promising to hold the wire until he returned. This process was turning out to have far too many steps for his liking. He needed to get back to the library before the others came looking for him. Joe walked into the shop and was greeted by an ancient husk that may have been a woman at one point. "Welcome, young lady. Are your parents around?" Joe looked around the empty shop, but she seemed to be talking to him. I'm neither young nor a lady." "Oh, sorry about that, young man. My eyes aren't as sharp as they once were, and you are painfully tiny for an adult man. You aren't a gnome, are you?" She adjusted glasses that would have served better as soda bottles and squinted at him. "Haven't seen gnomes around here for a few centuries." "Nope, just a thin human male." Joe was starting to become flustered. "I'm here to—" "Fix that poor robe," the elderly lady interrupted. "Good thing, too. It looks dejected, and it's unraveling by the second." She stood up and walked over, running her hands over the tattered clothing.